And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Tuesday, February 26, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is my co-host, my son, fellow investigator, Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and the Hagmann Report, and tonight we've got an extremely, extremely important show for you folks. I'm excited to have this show. Both Joe and I are so excited to have two very special guests on the program tonight. Before we bring them on, I just want to do some housekeeping here. First of all, I want to thank everyone for joining us and for listening to the program, for being part of our program. We've got Joe. First of all, welcome to the program, Joe. Welcome to the studio.
Glad to be here. And you are rebooting on a landline now, and we'll get you back up and running as soon as I see you pop on. I'll add you. But yes, Dr. Judy Wood, author of Where Did the Towers Go? The website, wheredidthetowersgo.com, and drjudywood.com. Lots of information there.
And, of course,
very excited to hear tonight's show. And
Pete Santilli's going to be on, too, of course, so the Pete Santilli Show. Folks, if you haven't tuned into the Pete Santilli Show, oh, my gosh, you've got to listen to Pete Santilli. He's got some of the most groundbreaking guests and some of the most groundbreaking information that you ever want to hear.
And you were on his show, and it was a great show.
Yeah. When
you were on a couple weeks ago, and we've been looking forward to having him on our show or talking with him, and we'll get the chance to do that tonight. And right before we get into and connect with Mrs. Wood and get you hooked up through Skype, I'm going to just say a quick couple pieces of news. The Senate, they have confirmed Hagel as the U.S. Defense Secretary, and this comes as no surprise to us. Regardless of his background, his beliefs, we have seen and knew that this was going to come about because they have this by design. They know who they want to put and where they want to put them and why. We went through the reasons for Brennan. I listened to True News yesterday, and it was a very interesting show, and I want to thank people in the chat room for letting us know about that show because it talks a lot about Brennan and the Muslim connection, his conversion to Islam. But not only that, it really gets in deep to the whole Muslim Brotherhood infiltration of the government, spanning from the DHS to the EPA to the executive branch. And it is very problematic. And there was a lot of things on his show yesterday that were pointed out that were new. It was new information to me. But yes, they've confirmed Hagel as the new U.S. Defense Secretary. And I think we have our guest, Dr. Judy Wood, on the line. Hi, Dr. Judy Wood. This is Joe Hagmann. My dad will be joining us shortly. He just is rebooting. And I want to thank you for coming on. It is a pleasure to have you. I have heard interviews that you've done in the past and have known about you and your work for a long time, as long as it's been out, as I've been following the 9/11 truth movement, and that's one of the things that really opened my eyes. So welcome to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, Dr. Judy Wood, and I'm going to bring my dad on now, and we will be ready to go.
Will you also be bringing Pete Santilli on?
Yes, I will be doing that here now that we got my dad on, I think.
Okay.
There we go. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Dr. Wood, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, beautiful. Well, things are working well then. Folks, I just to the listeners, the reason for this rushing around beforehand, Mr. Santilli was kind enough to allow us to post on our website, HomelandSecurityUS.com, a video, if you will, a PowerPoint presentation or a visual. So, folks, as you're listening to this program, you can go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, and on the top of our website, HomelandSecurityUS.com, is a box. It's actually going to be part of a video presentation, if you will. That will
it's a Ustream
right.
video.
And this is kind of a graphic heavy, if you will, a graphic heavy presentation. Well, we could do it without graphics, but it certainly works better with graphics. And for example, the book "Where Did the Towers Go?" and right off the bat, I want to just tell everyone, 30 years as an investigator, I've been looking for a book just like this, because I got to tell you, a lot of people talk about theories, a lot of crazy conspiracy theories out there, a lot of things that are premature in terms of in terms of who and the why, but Dr. Judy Wood addresses the what, and even a little bit of the how. Well, I mean the what and the how, I should say. The forensic evidence. It's a study of forensic evidence. It's a study of the physical evidence. It does what tonight is all about is factual, and Dr. Judy Wood has got quite the resume. She is she's got a bachelor's of science and master's of science. She's a PhD. She's an engineer, applied physics. I mean, she's got a tremendous resume. If you go to wheredidthetowersgo.com as well as drjudywood.com, you can read all about her background. But more importantly, you get the meat of our topic tonight. But I ask everyone listening to this broadcast, please order a copy of her book, because it's a must-read for your library. It's an absolute must-read for your library. And I got it about a week and a half ago. I'm about a third of the way through it. Halfway through it. I have a third of the book copied in notes. I've got the sticky things all over the book, the Post-it notes. And but what I found is this. I went through it really quickly when I first got it because I was so interested in the entire contents of the book. In fact, I won't even let Joe borrow it right now. He's going to have to get his own copy. But the one thing about this book is it leaves nothing to question. There's nothing questionable about this. This book, nothing questionable about her evidence as far as I'm concerned. It's straightforward. And I would be comfortable testifying in a court of law, whether it be the preponderance of evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt. I believe that Dr. Wood is...
It covers both.
It does. And so, Dr. Wood, without taking a lot of time, any more time, again, I just urge everyone to go to wheredidthetowersgo.com and drjudywood.com, both accessible via our home site at HomelandSecurityUS.com. Click on the links there. Grab yourself a copy of the book. Read it, devour it, commit it to memory. And the next time someone says, "Hey, there's nothing wrong with the official story of 9/11," tell them, show them the book. Show them the book. Don't give them your copy. Make them buy one, because Dr. Wood I'm sure she put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this book. Dr. Wood, how long did it take you to write this?
Well, I kind of wrote it as I went along, but it took a lot longer to get it out there. I first had a publisher who refused to publish it, and unless I cut it down to a fifth of the size and took out all the pictures, and took out half the information, and refused to let me out of the contract for a while. But fortunately, I was finally able to get out of that contract, and I wasn't going to risk hooking up with another one, so I published it myself.
Okay. So, I've got to tell you, as far as books go, it's a beautiful book. Seriously, it's a beautifully well laid out book. It's got over 800, I believe, illustrations and photographs, diagrams in it. It's well worth 3 times. I paid for textbooks, and this is a textbook-style book. It weighs like 10 pounds, and I've paid probably, I don't know, 3 times as much for various textbooks of the same kind. And so it's a deal. But thank you for making it available to the general public.
Thanks. And all the used books on Amazon are much more expensive than the new one.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yes, some of them are. I saw one for $1,000 today. They think that they're hard to come by, but they're generally at least $100.
Well, at either 36 or whatever the price. I don't remember what the price was.
Yeah, $39.95 and
okay.
plus the shipping.
I got to tell you, plus there is, in mine, I got a little handout, if you will, of the map of the World Trade Center and their complex area. It's like a handout that came with the book as well. So
yeah, a bookmark that has the map on it, and it shows the buildings and their height and just things that I wanted to have handy when I was looking over information, like when did the North Tower get its hole, when did the South Tower get its hole, when did the North Tower go away, and or also how tall were various buildings, how many stories tall was this building or that building, things like that.
Well, and I'm looking at this bookmark, this photographic bookmark, and Joe and I have been to New York City numerous times. We've spent 18 months working in New York City, but I walked down right after 9/11, walked down Vesey Street and walked down West Street, across through the rubble there, and it was taken by a detective actually through that area before it was opened or when it was still being cleaned up, and saw some of the most heinous things, on the sidewalk in terms of where the people had perished. And it affected me greatly. And I had seen some other things. I couldn't quite pick, as I wrote in my promo on HomelandSecurityUS.com earlier today, I saw some things I couldn't quite put a finger on. Things that bothered me that I just didn't know what they were. I mean, something bothered me. I just didn't know what it was when I was down there. And it was interesting because I was not allowed to take photographs past Vesey Street or West Street when I was down there right afterwards. They would not allow me to take photographs or take my camera, that is. And I thought that was rather unusual, but in retrospect, and after reading your book, I can understand why, or getting through your book as much as I did, I can understand why. But with that, I just want to say, Dr. Wood, thank you. Mr. Santilli, are you on the air?
I am. Please call me Pete. How are you? I'm here now.
Okay, Pete. Well, Pete, it's great to have you with us. And, of course, Pete Santilli of the Pete Santilli Show, PeteSantilliShow.com, right? Or no? I'm sorry.
It's the PeteSantilliShow.com. I have a daily broadcaster. Mm-hmm.
Had I not spilled coffee on my notes, I probably would have been able to read that. You know how that goes. But I got to tell you, if you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com and grab a hold of if you go down to the second link, all of the links, including Pete Santilli's website, his broadcasting website, are there, as well as Where Did the Towers Go, and Dr. Judy Wood, her site. So it's all there in a location sites to purchase the book as well. But welcome both of you. Joe and I are proud to have you. Now, Mr. Santilli, Pete, how do you want to start this off? Because you've interviewed Dr. Judy Wood before, and we can get clouded up. We can trip over ourselves, Joe and I could. How do you want to start this out? With your experience interviewing Dr. Wood, let me defer to you. Let's Joe and I defer to you. How do you want to start this out here? Or go ahead, Dr. Wood.
I know what I would like to start with, and it may seem elementary to people, but it's really it lays out the groundwork for it. Is to maybe begin at slide number 8.
All right. And once again, I'd like to direct everyone to HomelandSecurityUS.com, where Pete Santilli has been gracious enough to allow a PowerPoint presentation to be placed on our site. It's their proprietary material.
Well, actually, slide number 7 would even be the...
slide number 7?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, slide number 7. And just to remind people of where this all started. Let me know when it's up.
All right, and for those listening live, what happens is when you first click on the Ustream Live link, that's what you'll get. That's what you'll get. You'll get an ad initially. You'll have to go through that, and then after that runs its course, and the
while we're waiting for everyone to queue up here, we're on slide number 7 right now. But to answer your question, I mean, as far as myself and why I'm even here to supplement anything that Dr. Judy Wood could bring forward. I've been since 2006. I think I became a 9/11 truther per se. I discovered that certain things weren't right, and I started looking at it. But it wasn't until about October or November before I saw Dr. Judy Wood's presentation. And I can literally say that it was a life-changing experience seeing her book and learning that a lot of evidence has been concealed for many, many years, from my eyes anyway. And I'm sure that will apply to just about anybody listening to this today.
But it was hidden in plain sight, and I'm going to explain the secret behind how that's done. And I think it's probably done in most crimes of whatever size. It's essentially a magic show where you're directed to look over here while the trickery is going on over there.
It's there's nothing new under the sun. We're living lies, a number of lies, in the number of in just about everything that's taking place right in front of our very eyes, and it's covered. It is a magic act. 9/11 is no different. Okay.
To have 2 500,000-ton buildings go missing, and nobody realized that is around the world. Isn't that pretty amazing?
And a lot of people don't. I don't really think a lot of people understand how big those towers were, how huge those towers. That was me. How huge?
Let me know when it's queued up. Is it ready to roll?
Let's see.
We're on number 7. It's got the yellow block down in the bottom right-hand corner.
Okay.
Beautiful. Yeah. Okay. On the left, we see what was there beforehand, and that yellow box is all that's left that afternoon, and which you see on the right with those. The outer walls. The outer walls were made out of prefab units of 3 stories tall by 3 columns wide, and they look like wheat check cereal. One photographer referred to them as wheat checks, and I think that's a good way to refer to these sections of outer wall. So you just see a few wheat checks left there. I want to click it and go to reminding you what was there, and to have that much material just turn to dust and go away. It's the dawn of a new age. Somebody has in their hands the ability to direct the way energy is used. It's disrupting the molecular bonds of matter. And if we could, then click it again. If we can figure out how they did that, think of what that means. Free energy. Energy was directed geographically as well as giving it instructions as to do something differently than it normally does. To just take instead of the molecules being attracted to each other, they repelled each other, and the building, just came apart into dust. So, and click it. The technology exists. We know it exists because the whole world saw it. They saw what happened. They just didn't know how to interpret it.
Wow. Okay. Go on. It just blew my mind just looking at this. Go ahead, Dr. Wood.
Yeah, seeing how much material is there, and then what it ended up with. I'm not watching the online thing, so I'm not sure. We're back to the original image of with the yellow box on it, showing that that's all that's left of those huge buildings.
Well, your book is aptly named then. Where did the towers go?
And it was partly motivated by this conversation we'll see of Peter Jennings in the studio talking to George Stephanopoulos on the site, and Peter Jennings asked him, where'd all the rubble go? And when he said that, I saw that live. It was 24 hours after the event. And I went, oh, good, somebody else is asking the same question. But that was the last time I heard it.
So, according to your book, there was a whole lot of material that just vaporized. Well, it didn't say it dustified.
So, right. If we look at slide 8, this is just the kind of warm up as to set the scene here. The towers didn't burn up and they didn't slam to the ground. They turned into dust in midair. Think about that. You can see it squirting up and out. This is dustifying. We don't have a word in our vocabulary to describe this process because we've never seen it before. So using a known word to describe an unknown phenomenon is incorrect because then you're biasing your observation, so it needs a new word. And so I use dustification. I mean, it's pretty clear what that means. And
well, right. Now, but see, we all watch this on television, if not live, then certainly on the rebroadcast. We saw the towers come down. Why didn't anyone, well, you obviously at the time, or people like you in the know, said, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right here, I guess. Is that what you, when you saw this live, or when you saw the first time you saw this, what did you think, Dr. Wood?
Wait, somebody was pulling a fast one. It was like a visual version of War of the Worlds, which was, on radio. And I was in the faculty conference room amongst colleagues who were professors of mechanical engineering. And I looked like, you guys aren't buying this, are you? I didn't state that, but that's the expression I had on my face, almost snickering, like somebody's playing a joke on us. And they looked at me like I was some weird wacko. And they were already sucked into it. They were already, entrapped in the bamboozle. And that was the creepiest feeling. Oh, yeah.
And as everyone did, I suppose, or most people did, we're watching it live. I mean, how could it be anything other than the fact that planes hit buildings and the buildings fell down because of the jet fuel, the heat, and the collateral damage from the planes. So, but when you saw it, obviously based on your experience, you saw something totally different, and you saw this magic act take place.
Yep. I want to go to slide 9, and this is where it unfolds. Why did so many people not see this on 9/11? And I've come to the conclusion there's 3 basic reasons: problem-solving skills, and groupthink or peer pressure, and they're terrified of the implications. One or more of those things would block someone's ability to see what was happening. If folks around them are thinking whatever, they're going to think that too. That's, the pressure of groupthink. But I like to first start with the problem-solving issue. How do you solve a problem? You first have to define the problem. But go ahead and click on that next one about, the answer is 27. Am I right? Is the answer 27?
Yes.
Well, what's the question? You have to first establish what the question is before you know if 27 is the right answer.
Okay.
And that is the key. That is the key to it all. Because if you start out with a conclusion, you imagine what the question is, so you're solving an imaginary problem.
I called it a trick question the first time she asked me that, by the way.
Well, I feel like I just learned something here just now, but okay, you're right.
So if you start out getting everyone to argue about, how it happened or who did it, before they've established what happened, they're only arguing about imaginary problems, and they can never, ever, ever solve it. That's the secret. So let's go to the next slide, slide 10. And I call that a syntax error. Normally in math, it's, the order of where you multiply or divide or, add, it'll change what the answer is. And some people think that if you, throw everything in there, including the kitchen sink, then click to the averaging out the answers. Yeah, or average the answers, that you come up with a solution. You just throw things out there. But you first, if you define the problem, then you can get to the answer. So Pete, you want to click it to get it so it shows the theory. So if we start out with theory, a theory of how it happened. And from there, you're going to say eeny, meeny, miny, moes, fire or thermite or dynamite or planes in the buildings or mini nukes, whatever. Someone's going to pick from this known list. You're already biasing your observations. You're going to go cherry picking and collecting data in a biased manner to support one of your preconceived ideas. And if you click it now, what happens if it's something else than what you already, considered? You're fixing to mess up. So what you're doing is starting out with a theory and establishing what happened. Click you're using a theory to establish what happened rather than the evidence.
Biased data collection, obviously. Okay, wow.
Because then if it's something else, you've not included in that box, because it's a multiple choice test where the correct answer isn't on the test.
Are we that far gone, Dr. Wood? And seriously,
yeah.
Wow.
Because if you start out with the answer, you're assuming what the problem is. Look at the case of Casey Anthony. The prosecution hadn't determined what happened. It doesn't matter if she's guilty or innocent or whatever you imagine she did. It hadn't been established what she did. So this wonderful juror the next day said why they decided the way they did, because they didn't know what happened to the child, how the child died. If you don't know what the crime is, how do you convict somebody of what was the crime?
Sure. What was the crime and how was it perpetrated? So you've got to answer those questions. You should really have the answer.
Rather than going on a witch hunt. Otherwise, it's a witch hunt.
Yeah, but you know what? I keep going back to this normalcy bias, I suppose. This despite my investigative experience, I keep going back to well, wait a minute. I saw this happen on television. I saw it happen live.
You were told what to see.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you blocked out your ears, you would have come up with a different conclusion. Because that's what I do. When my eyes and ears don't agree, I just shut off my ears. And I look with my eyes. And what I saw was a building unraveling like a sweater. And you stop and imagine, does a collapse look like that? Nope. So I knew something there was weird. And I just block out my ears after that. I grew up without a television, so I wasn't programmed to, jump in.
Okay. You mind if I interject? I think
Please.
I saw this today for the first time. As a matter of fact, Doug, I think this is probably the best indication of what I was told on 9/11 by some of these actors. And we know now that what these people were saying, what they were telling us on that day, is completely false. I actually heard on Morgan Reynolds' show today a Fox News clip where an actor, a guy that was identified as an actor, on the street talking to a news reporter, actually telling the audience what they were seeing. And if I can play that for us here, it's very, very impactful. This is what
sure.
Yeah.
Freelancer for Fox. You live just a few blocks away and witnessed, dude. I live on the 43rd floor of a building which is 5 blocks from the World Trade Center itself. I witnessed the entire thing from beginning to end. People talk about how it looked like a movie. I know when I came walking down here early this morning and saw both towers on fire and people on every street corner, it was like a movie. But you watched the planes hit the towers. I was watching with my roommate. It was approximately several minutes after the first plane had hit. I saw this plane come out of nowhere and just scream right into the side of the Twin Tower, exploding through the other side. And then I witnessed both towers collapse, one first and then the second, mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense. Obviously, there were a lot of people inside the...
Because the fire was too intense. I mean, he was essentially identified as an actor. He was on the news telling us what we saw, and he obviously put some stuff in our brains that were permanently embedded.
But we did see that the plane hit, and we did see it not come out.
We saw what we were told was a plane.
Okay.
And so, if you're going to pull off a magic show, see, I start with what do I know that I know. This is a big thing of mine. I say, know what you know that you know, and know that everything else you don't know, and don't mix the two.
That's good advice.
So especially if it's a psyops thing, and for sure 9/11 was a psyops. You need to be really careful if you're being led down the garden path. If you're being led down the garden path, it's time to leave the garden and go think by yourself. And so people are very easily pulled, in one direction or another. You want to put up slide 11. This is because to tell you what happened. If you want to know what happened, you have to start with the evidence. You don't start with assumptions or conclusions. And if you look at this, when the building came apart, here are these wheat checks falling, trailing dust. And you notice the aluminum, these were steel structures with aluminum cladding on the outside. The aluminum cladding is flying off, and it doesn't seem to be trailing dust, but the steel beams and columns are trailing dust. Now, I like to challenge people with the idea of impersonating one of those steel beams. So if you're going to impersonate the steel beam, what would you do? Stand on the top of the tower, cover yourself with dust, and jump off. And from the ground, you look up. Is somebody going to see that much dust pouring off of you? No way. Okay, so you carry a couple armloads of bags of flour, and you eject that out as you're falling. Are you going to look like you have that much an opaque trail of dust behind you? No.
Yeah.
The
Okay,
first thing you realize, that steel beam is turning into dust as it falls. That's where the dust is coming from. This isn't just a dirty, dusty beam from a windowsill that wasn't cleaned. And it blocked out 100% of the sunlight for a few minutes.
Okay, and for those just listening to this program, there's a split screen. One with the on the left-hand side of the screen is what I don't even know how to describe it. The wheat check is the facade of the building of the Trade Center, and then the second on the right-hand side is a mess of dust.
Yeah, and don't forget these buildings were built to withstand an impact of a plane. These buildings were built. There were basically three separate buildings, each one put on top of each other.
Right. Wow. Okay. And that's slide 11. Okay, Dr. Wood, go ahead.
And if you can go to slide 12 just to have the visual there. That you have to first establish what happened before you can do anything else. Because see, if we'd start out with eeny, meeny, miny, mo, it was thermite, it was fire, it was planes, we wouldn't have identified that piece of evidence that the steel beams were turning to dust as they fell. So that's the importance of first establishing what happened before you can determine how it happened, before you can determine who was involved or why they did it. And of course, before noon on 9/11, we were told they did it because they hate us for our freedoms. It was bin Laden. It was, we were told the answer before what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, back to I don't mean to go backwards, but back to the plane. Like, we were told that they were planes, and I've heard you say that to me before, and I've never really focused on the plane issues because I know that was just part of the whole story, because the towers couldn't just turn to dust in midair without an excuse. But when you say we were told they were planes, is that because it might be a possibility that it could have been a drone or something else? Or you just say that's what we were told?
Well, that's what we're told, and we shouldn't make any assumptions because if somebody wants to pull off a crime, they can have people, lead themselves to a different conclusion than what is the correct thing with the evidence. And if it's a plane, then planes behave a certain way with dynamics and structurally, and they don't make a cookie cutter cutout like a Roadrunner cartoon.
Sure.
And they have there's other things when they hit, there's a whole lot of things we get into about that, but the plane issue turns out to be a very emotional thing, and people are very convinced of whatever because they're in the traumatized state, and as opinions are really ingrained, but they don't matter as to what happened to the building. Planes cannot turn buildings into powder in midair. Real planes can't, and neither can fake planes. So it turns out the plane issue is nothing but a distraction.
We were also told that a Saudi Arabian was piloting the plane as well, but nobody can tell us that that's actually true. We were told that, correct?
Right, and everyone's seen that on a passenger manifest and a bunch of other things. The plane issue is a whole separate can of worms that I've looked into that, but it ends up being a distraction mixing it in with what happened to buildings, and it's sort of like the getaway car, in a crime.
All right, we can stay with what we know, or the physical evidence, or what you've covered in your book, and I think that's probably the safest place. And from there, we can build from there at another time, or when as more evidence is developed. But okay, so basically, what happened, Dr. Wood? I mean, we're looking at these slides. We're looking at these towers disintegrating, dustifying. What's going on?
Well, there's three main things that show that the buildings turn into dust in midair. And one of those is that, if the building had slammed to the ground, you'd see a pile of debris left over, and that didn't happen. If they slammed to the ground, the bathtub would have ruptured and would have flooded all of lower Manhattan. Something that most people don't realize is that the towers were built in the Hudson River on bedrock 70 feet below the water table. So then they had this water retaining wall, like a dike, around the base of the towers. If that dike had been ruptured, there's no question you would have flooded all the subway tunnels and so forth in lower Manhattan. And the third thing is, if the towers had slammed to the ground, the seismic charts would have reflected that, and that didn't happen either.
That's true. Now I've got the seismic readings here in my hand. But let's go back to the bathtub, because I think that's an extremely important part of this. Of course, the Hudson River is off to the west of the complex of the plaza. You've got
so we
building.
Can look at,
go ahead.
Sorry, slide 36 and 37. You can show. Or just.
I think this is so important, the bathtub aspect of this, because back in '93 there was significant damage. Of course, that was an alleged blast in the parking garage, but there was. Okay, wait, there we go. The slides are up, I believe.
So which one are you looking at? 37 or 36?
36.
Okay, and so you see the Hudson. This is before they built the World Financial Center across the street. So they were already extending out off of the rock of Manhattan offshore. Then they built a dike around. But you can see the first floor is right there at water level. And so the 7 stories below ground were all below the water level. And then there's this path train tunnel it rests on the bottom of the bathtub and goes underground over to the New Jersey side. And that wasn't breached.
Okay, now someone would say, Dr. Wood, though, that with the trauma or with an impact or something taking place on top, way above 80-some stories above ground level, that even with the collapse, one would expect, or one could say that, or one could excuse the fact that this bathtub was not breached. What do you have to say about that?
You have 500,000-ton brick and you slam it down to the ground. It's going to do something to the ground. And we can compare that with regular controlled demolitions and how they behave. A building at 1/30th of the potential energy, that's, mass times height, at 1/30th of the, 3 times 10, 1/30th of the potential energy made more of an impact than the South Tower did. The Seattle King Dome made a 2.3 on the Richter scale, the equivalent of 2.3. Well, the South Tower made a 2.1.
Okay, which doesn't make sense at all.
And Building 7 made a 0.6 on the Richter scale, and it's 6 times the size of potential energy-wise of the King Dome.
Okay. Wow. So that would certainly indicate you're going to one of your latter chapters, the dustification of the building. That would certainly indicate to me that the full force or the full weight of what was 80 plus stories above ground, or 100 and some stories above ground, didn't impact the ground as it should, or didn't register a seismic reading as it should then. So that means that, it turned to dust on the way down.
And not only that, the only seismic signal was a surface wave, which is like what you would get if you get out of bed in the morning, your mattress springs back because the weight is removed from it. If you slam something down onto bedrock, a 500,000-ton load on the bedrock, it'd be like ringing a tuning fork. And at the other end of that bedrock is the seismic recording station, plenty of other seismic recording stations, and they did not pick up waves that traveled through the earth. Remember when you learn about seismic signals, they talk about the P wave arriving first, then the S wave, and the difference, the lag in that arrival time tells you how far away the epicenter is, because those two waves travel at different speeds through the earth. One is like snapping a rubber band. That's the P wave. It goes a lot faster. And then the other one is like the vibration is horizontal, so it's like wiggling a jump rope. as it ripples down. And those waves were not recorded for the demise of any of the buildings on 9/11. Neither tower or Building 7 or Building 3 or 4 for that matter.
And Dr. Judy, today we heard from Rob Salt. He was there at Ground Zero, just a matter of blocks away, and he was told that one of the towers had collapsed, and he didn't even hear it. He was a couple blocks away. He didn't hear a thing.
And that would only be possible, Pete, with, I mean, if you've got tons of concrete coming down, you're going to hear. I mean, you're going to hear.
Or steel, it should be sounding like it was raining dump trucks.
Yeah, that's a pretty good assumption. Yeah.
So, okay, now in your book, and I'm trying to follow along too. I've got your book on one side, the screen on the other. In chapter 2, and maybe I'm regressing here, but you do point out the billiard ball example, and then with subheadings of that or subchapters, the pancake theory, and of course the visual evidence. What's the billiard ball example? Am I regressing too far?
No. If you go to slide 42, and there's going to be a lot of clicks in there. If you start out there. Let's see him.
That blue line down.
All right, you got. Okay, so when you start there, you see this blue line. Now you notice the horizontal scale is time. So let's pretend you're standing on top of the building. You drop a billiard ball over the edge, and it's going to take about 9.5 seconds to reach the ground.
All right.
That's just dropping free fall over the edge. And if you click the screen. Now we have a problem that we have. Let's say we're going to overestimate the damage. We're going to say 9 out of every 10 floors is removed. It's been destroyed. So the 110th floor is going to drop and hit the 100th floor, but we see that the building's turned to dust, so it goes poof. But let's say it has enough energy to trigger the next floor to collapse. It doesn't, but let's assume it does, just for timing purposes. Now, it doesn't have enough energy to dustify one floor, and it doesn't have enough energy to collapse the next floor, but we'll assume it has energy to do both, and just look at the timing. So what this is imagining that, you have somebody every 10 stories holding their hand out with the reason why I use billiard balls, they're standard issue, just different color. So you have the blue ball on the roof, and then the red ball on the 100th floor, and the yellow or the orange ball on the 90th floor, and so forth. And the person, for example, on the 100th floor can't drop their ball until the next one goes by. In other words, you can't trigger the collapse of the floor below until the other ball gets there, right?
Okay, right, okay.
So go ahead and click, and I show the blue ball coming down. And as you click again, you have the red ball. It can't come down until the blue ball gets there. So you can click again, which shows you have to move that over so that it can't start until it gets triggered to start. And so you have this kind of relay race. And just that alone is over 30 seconds. And if it's 4 by 4 by 4, that's 100 seconds.
Well, wait a minute. Okay, as an investigator here, then I got a real problem.
Uh-huh. You assume we have a problem. And you click again, and it shows it's 9.22 seconds just for the first one, and then you got that, triggering kind of thing. And if you go ahead and click till you get to slide 43, the ground only shook for 8 seconds. That's even a bigger problem.
Okay, how so? When you say it only shook for 8 seconds, why is that significant?
Because if it takes 9.5 seconds to drop a billiard ball off the roof.
Oh, yeah.
Why'd the ground only shake for 8 seconds?
Oh, wow.
Unless it turned to dust and never hit the ground. It didn't slam to the ground.
Well, yeah, okay. There's really, I'm trying to find an alternative explanation. I can't.
And if you click it again, I've got the next one. There's 4 clicks in this slide, but it shows if you want to get it all on the ground, the fastest you can get on the ground is 9.5 seconds. So if you move all of the triggerings,
Okay.
to just keep clicking till they all move over. You have to give all the floors a head start before they get triggered. So you can't have a progressive collapse, because those floors below, even if they're going to get on the ground in 9.5 seconds, they have to all have a head start.
Right. Okay.
So it says that you can't have a progressive collapse. Just looking at the timing alone, not the energy or anything else.
It's physically impossible, right?
Right.
How? Okay, I'm really trying to get this through my head here. How is it possible that this happened right in front of our noses? That people of your stature, of your knowledge, saw this, and either it got by them or they said nothing. I mean, is it because we're so conditioned, Dr. Wood? Is this it?
Very much. It comes to that issue with problem solving. If people are brought up, generations of multiple choice testing, like the SAT test and all, it's this big pressure for time to get to the best answer and go on, and you focus on the answer, not the process.
Right.
And what my book forces people to do, and why it can't be spoon fed to somebody very easily. Like somebody wants it in a so they don't have to read it. They just want to take the pill, and it really has to be a very good critical thinking exercise. And by the end, the person has to calm down and realize, okay, what's this, and then they start realizing how the pieces fall together. But you can't jump to the end. It doesn't work that way.
I can see that. Now you talk about the pancake theory. I think we covered that a little bit, because that's really an integral part of the official story, where the floor is pancaked. And of course, what you said, it would take a certain amount of time, and of course, in record speed, the free fall or the fall of the buildings were completed long before that pancake theory would have completed itself. I mean, I'm not sure if I explained that right.
Well, yeah, there isn't enough time for any kind of baton passing to get to the bottom. Another way of looking at it is you have 110 floors. And if it went away in 8 seconds or 9.5 seconds, whatever, how fast can you clap? Can you clap 110 times in 8 seconds?
Wow. Think about that, folks.
I've already tried.
No.
I think there is the Guinness World Record holder does, but he uses a tricky thing of clapping back on his hands as he's moving his hands, double clapping. But another mental exercise I did actually on that day is, the building's about a quarter mile tall, rotate on its side, and you get a world record, 4-minute mile guy, and he's running alongside the building. How long does it take to run a quarter mile? Well, if it does a 4-minute mile, then that's 1 minute. It's going to take him to run the length of that building at world record pace.
Wow. Now that's a mental picture there that should be able to satisfy people's need for mental images. Now you point out here with the pancaking theory, a minimum of like.
Oh, it's not serious. It's an mental exercise.
Okay.
It's not a model of the building at all. It's just a mental exercise, because people have been trained to see with the buildings, terrorists, horror scene, collapse, pile. These words have ingrained in people's minds, and the brain doesn't function. So step aside and look at the billiard ball thing. It's just a mental exercise, and people's brains can function there. They're just innocent billiard balls. And it's also, billiard balls are sort of the cue to put on your thinking cap. You don't want to look like a fool, so you can follow that through, and then you can realize the logic, and then go back to the actual scene and see, yeah, no way.
Well, okay. In your book, I have marked off here, if every floor were to pancake in line with the official model of the collapse that we're told, then the time required would be approximately 100 seconds, 1 minute and 40 seconds, folks. Almost 2 minutes. Not the almost free fall collapse rate of less than 10 seconds that we saw with our own eyes. And I go back to how can that be?
Mm-hmm.
And that's assuming, free fall between floors.
Right, without resistance.
Right. And the assumption I made is what we see is, there's nothing left at the end of the day. There's no pile driver stacking up. The building was dustifying as it went down. So you don't have an accumulation of mass.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and on slide 47, I have a picture a few blocks over by one of the subway tunnels, by the Fulton Street subway tunnel. It's not in Fulton Street, but it's a block over from that. And it's like ankle-deep dust all over. Yeah, that part of the building didn't make a thud when it hit. It also didn't contribute to pushing the building down.
Okay, go on. But what are we? Okay, so what? Is it too early to ask at this point what we're seeing, or should we go into more?
Oh, excellent that you asked. That's great. I didn't have to get a ruler out and slap you on the wrist. Because it's hard for people to just take in the evidence, and you take in the evidence long enough, and it'll tell you exactly what happened. That's another key too. Whenever you jump to a conclusion, what happens if what you've imagined is not what happened? Then you're fixing to mess up. You're clouding your mind with biased observations. So if you just take in the evidence, so what we do know and what we have established is the building turned into dust in midair. And there's also some videos of that are quite striking.
That's a pretty bitter pill to swallow. Okay, turning to dust in midair. Okay.
You want to go to let's see, slide 62.
All right.
Okay.
And what we see,
Sure.
Okay. Is it up?
There it is.
All right, and you'll see around in the corner, I don't know if you want to point it out, Pete, that there's one of the steel beams you'll see emerge from there, trailing dust. And it's just see down, you look at the northwest corner of the North Tower as it's coming apart. And there's this steel beam that's emerging, kind of a bright color, and it's definitely trailing dust. And keep watching it. You'll see that it just goes away.
No.
You can't tell me that dust that is trailing it overtook it. No, it ran out of dust because it dissolved before it hit the ground. And you start looking at all of the other things getting heaved out of there, and they're turning to dust as they fall. So if they never hit the ground as a solid, they don't make a seismic signal.
How is that possible? Well, folks, what we're looking at is a slide. Well, not a slide, an animation here of.
Pete, you want to go to the next video? It reruns and it shows it. No, the next video just shows it full speed.
Okay.
And it shows it several times. And you start looking around at the various steel pieces, and you can see they're turning to dust in midair. This is actually, I think, the most important issue of it all, because when people say, "Oh, you don't have any evidence of such a weapon exists," this is the evidence. If these beams the majority of the building is turning to dust in midair, that is proof that technology that can do this exists.
Well, I'm looking at this. Go ahead, Joe. You got something?
I mean, she makes a good point here, and this is where people start to have different opinions on what happened and how the buildings were brought to the collapse. But regardless, obviously, any impact from a plane or whatever else would not cause this damage.
Well, we don't even have to go there. We're just looking at a disintegration in midair of material.
Right. Which would not be caused by
anything that I've ever seen.
Joe, can I mention something, Joe? a lot of people have expressed to me their opinion of what they think took place on 9/11, and I always reference back to this image right here. When somebody says, "Oh, nanothermite," or whatever it is, that I don't even want to use that term, but when they say things other than what I'm observing, I ask myself, is that possible in this image? Could a piece of steel turn to dust in midair with what you just told me happened?
Well, my understanding of physics is limited, but the way this building is demolished, I don't know what on earth could cause it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you can see, Pete, you want to do slide 62 again, the previous one, the slow motion? And in that one, you look at this piece of steel falling and it goes away. You can't say that fine dust isn't going to fall. You can say that fine dust isn't going to fall as fast as a solid steel beam. So, but how is it overtaking the steel beam? So that doesn't make sense. The beam is generating that dust as it falls.
Would it be an accurate statement to say as that beam falls, it is becoming dust or it's disintegrating?
Yes. The molecules, instead of being attracted to each other, are repelling each other. That's why it looks like water coming to a boil, sort of just frothing out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, Pete, was this kind of the frame or series of the animation that really kind of made you do a double take here of the entire situation?
This is one of them, yes, and I'll explain when it actually comes up. The other thing that was just remarkable to me, but this is, it's indisputable. I'm watching pieces, and if you look at some of the other particles, you can see pieces of steel that are turning to dust in midair as it's falling. And then when you look at the total picture, you see that this building is turning to dust in midair. It's unquestionable. Your eyes, you can't tell me that I'm seeing anything other than that.
And immediately afterwards, you don't see a pile of stuff left over on the ground. Like if you go to slide 64, this is right where that stuff should have been falling, that intersection of Vesey and West. And you just see unburned paper there, and you see one aluminum cladding piece. There were some steel pieces, but we saw those pieces falling towards that intersection.
That's correct. And I was just visualizing standing on the corner of West and Vesey, or Liberty and Vesey, or Liberty and West. I'm sorry, or West.
Or Vesey and West. Do you see is the picture up? Slide 64.
It is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like you, Doug or Joe, to describe what you think the body language is for those people standing there. Apparently, they've just come out of their hiding places. During the destruction of the building, they just come out of their hiding places. What are they saying?
What?
The people closest to the camera don't look like they were around as the buildings were collapsing, or they're not full of dust. They are walking onto a scene of where the biggest buildings in New York City stood, now empty, probably in shock.
What the heck?
You see hands on the hips, arms folded, hands at the sides.
Yes.
See the guy looking from Vesey Street with his hands on his hips, like, what the heck?
Yeah. Wasn't there a building here this morning?
110 stories worth, and now it's gone.
And they have dust and paper, unburned paper.
That bothered me a little bit too. But I thought, well, the ejecta from the floors that weren't on fire would have caused the paper to come out and other things. But to me, and as I was going through your book, the fact that this is unburned paper, but well, it's kind of like what I heard you say before, where the toilets, we've got paper, but with lack of other material that's within the debris. Something's not right here with this. And I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this. I can see this. Folks, this is incredible. But by the way, we're up against the top of the hour break for our stations that are simulcasting this on AM and FM. I want to let you know we are joined by Dr. Judy Wood and, of course, Mr. Pete Santilli. If you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, you can click on the website of Dr. Judy Wood and also Mr. Pete Santilli Show. And Where Did the Towers Go? This is a very special Tuesday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. It is the 26th day of February 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me in studio is Joe Hagmann. Folks, we're right back after about 2.5 minutes of messages. Stay with us. And tune in, by the way, for the PowerPoint on HomelandSecurityUS.com, compliments of the Pete Santilli Show. Stay with us.
And it gives me a chance to stop on recording.
Hi, folks.
By the way,
Doug
I
Hagmann
am
here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the Internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
Folks, I want to direct you to our newest sponsor. That's Granlund Firearms of British Columbia. GranlundFirearms.com. That's GranlundFirearms.com. Granlund Firearms of British Columbia. Check them out. They've got a full list, or a full showroom, if you will, of gun stock, or guns, weapons, hunting supplies. One of my favorite things from their website is a book called Tree Beyond the River, Cougar Hunting on Vancouver Island. It's written by Carl Granlund, and I got to tell you, it's a fantastic book. It's available via their website. It's just really a great read, folks. Granlund Firearms of British Columbia. It's a hunter's paradise. If you're up in Vancouver, up in that area, or I'm sorry, up in Campbell River, British Columbia, check them out. Stop in right across from the movie theater there. And if you can't get up there in person, certainly visit them on the internet, GranlundFirearms.com. Check out their photo gallery. Check out the books that they have. Check out the news, the T-shirts and hats. Get yourself a T-shirt. I like the black T-shirt with the deer head on it. Fantastic. From small to 2XL. That's GranlundFirearms.com, GranlundFirearms.com. Sign the guest book when you're up there. Tell them Doug and Joe Hagmann sent you.
Hold on to your seats. The Hagmann and Hagmann flight is now taking off. Doug and Joe Hagmann have cleared the runway of TSA agents, jihadists, political crackpots, and global elitists. Now get ready for some real news. Here they are, Doug and Joe Hagmann.
Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a very special Tuesday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Very, very honored to have on two of my favorite people, and I mean this. Pete Santilli, great guy, the Pete Santilli Show, permanent link off of HomelandSecurityUS.com. He has allowed us to offer the visual presentation on HomelandSecurityUS.com. So if you're listening to this and you're by a computer, get to your computer, go to HomelandSecurityUS.com and follow along as Dr. Judy Wood is talking about her findings. And folks, let me, and I see some activity in the chat room, let me just verify something here. The topic of tonight's conversation is, where did the towers go? It's not, were there airplanes, or were there little green men in the basement, or was there a car bomb, or did a bird land on top of the towers and take them down? It's where did they go? It's an examination of the physical evidence, nothing more, nothing less. And I love what Dr. Judy Wood had written about the physical evidence and about evidence itself. It's really simple, okay? It's something drilled into my head for the last 30 years. The evidence always tells the truth. This is not a case of belief. This is a crime that should be solved by forensic study of the evidence, and that's it, period. And Dr. Judy Wood is here to provide the evidence, and Mr. Pete Santilli is here to provide the ancillary evidence as well, and to work the video, or work the PowerPoint as well. So that's what it's all about today. Mr. Santilli and Dr. Wood, welcome back.
Thanks.
Once again.
All right, Dr. Wood, take us where we need to go right now. We know that the buildings came down.
I don't know if they came down.
I'm sorry.
They went away. They were there, and then they're gone. That's we do know that. Remember, know that you know.
See how conditioned I am? Do you see this?
Oh, exactly.
Oh,
this is deprogramming too.
Wow.
They were NDA'd. Permanently disappeared.
Yeah. Okay.
We were given these words, and that's why we need a new vocabulary, because we associate things with words. Collapse, the buildings came down, the buildings fell, terrorism, pile. So you assume there's a pile there. We haven't established there's a pile there.
The only thing we've established is that we can't believe our lying eyes almost. We can believe what we're seeing. We just can't believe what we're being told, I guess, is the lesson here.
We can, you see, we have slide 65 up. This is from Building 7. And same thing, it may have looked different by looking at one little corner of the building, but it really is the same type of thing, just manifests a little bit differently. The building is, the left side is, they're both from a video during the demise of that building, but the left one is about 1 second ahead of the one on the right. And you see in 1 second time, a whole lot more froth, dustification has come out from every point of the building.
Okay, and
that isn't from a collapse.
Okay.
That's a whole lot of dust being generated.
Go
ahead, Joe.
This is a good time to address this question, but people are asking where was this equipment located?
What equipment?
Right. We're talking about evidence.
Okay. Well,
you have to first establish what happened.
Okay.
So I'll bring that up.
But we're establishing the building turned to dust. Most of the building, not 100% of it, but most of the building turned to dust. And once we establish that, it doesn't matter, what the serial numbers are on whatever gizmo, wherever. We know that the building mostly turned to dust.
Okay.
But something that can do that exists.
Pete and Dr. Wood, I got to tell you something. I was, after 9/11, I was the biggest rah-rah neocon kind of guy, wrap myself in the flag, let's say bomb the heck out of anybody who did this. And, I fell for every bit of the party line or of the national official story. Mm-hmm. So this is very uncomfortable for me to see this in real time, even though I've gone through the book and I've seen the book, but to see this and have you explain this, Dr. Woods, it's very uncomfortable for me.
Mm-hmm.
knowing, and Mr. Santilli, did you experience a period of discomfort about this? Like,
yeah, I would say, my first reaction, because, Dr. Judy Wood taught me when I was looking at the evidence. She actually guided me through a full presentation, and she said, just absorb the evidence, because I wanted to naturally just come to conclusions, say, okay, what was it that caused this? And she said, just absorb the evidence. She said, I'm not going to tell you anything, just look at it. And once you start absorbing it, my first reaction to it was, I can't believe that A, this has been concealed from me, and B, there's no possible way that I haven't been lied to for many, many years. And I was upset by that. I was almost nauseous thinking about the fact that the so-called 9/11 truthers out there and the scholars and all those experts and scientists had essentially been just either concealing some information from me or just flat out lying to me. I was upset.
And rightfully so, because yeah. I feel the same way.
And in some cases, this is the first time you're seeing this stuff. This was the first time in November, October was the first time someone had presented this to me, and I was upset by that.
Well, for whatever reason, this is hitting me a little bit different because I watched the presentation on your website, and folks, off of Hagmann or off of the HomelandSecurityUS.com, definitely visit petersantilli.com and take a look at the presentation, but this is something totally different, Pete. I got to tell you, this is totally different to me.
That's why people want the book in like easy to feed format, and why there's lots of different reasons why I insist on having the book by itself, because there's some people who just resist having anyone cloud up what they believe, and they're going to fight it. Their ego or whatever, their pride, they're not going to want to look at something new. But here they are in the privacy of their own room with this book, nobody to save face to, that is just between them and and the book, and then they can work through it. And by the time they get to the end, they've been empowered. They now know what happened, and it isn't that with anyone else. And I think that might be something similar like that going on with this video. You're not just watching it passively in this what we're doing. You're being able to ask questions and deal with it. So you process it through your mind.
Wow. This is definitely something, I just feel like I'm experiencing this for the very first time. Well, Dr. Wood, go ahead and take us in the next to the next place where we need to go.
If we go to slide 66, you see this map, and I'm going to show you the views from all sorts of different angles of this interesting event. And in the middle of WTC1, there's the remaining core columns. I believe that it was the top of stairwell B, but I don't have that for certain. But it looks like it's one of the core columns. And if we go on to slide 67, we're going to watch something. We'll watch it quite a few times. The building peels away, and there's remaining some core columns that are about 700 feet tall. You can see it towers way above Building 7, which is a 47-story building.
Right. Building 7 is in the foreground, right? On the left?
Yes.
Okay.
And watch this. It just kind of faints, turns to dust.
Okay.
Now watch it again. These are our core columns. The floors have been stripped away from, so they have no load on them.
It's a 700-foot column.
That's where the arrow is, 700 foot.
Dustified. Watch it again.
Man.
This column right here. Watch that turn to dust.
Wow.
And my detractors say, well, it fell over. Well, I show it from all different angles, like 9 degrees from that, and the same thing. But if it fell over, it would take out several city blocks. And that didn't happen. You don't see the leftovers in the ground. It didn't happen. And okay, even if you cut a 700-foot hole in the ground, drop that thing down in that hole, they're claiming that the dust you see was what settled on the vertical column from the demise of the building. And they're saying it's so fine it hangs in the air when the columns fall over. Well, if it hangs in the air when the columns fall over because it's so fine, how did it land on the columns to begin with? You can't have it both ways.
No. No, Joe, did you have something to say? No? Okay. No, I'm looking at this column that just, you're right, turns to dust. Dustifies.
And slide 68, you'll see how it peels like a banana. The floors and adjacent columns get peeled away from it, so it's not having to carry a load anymore. This thing wasn't designed to be freestanding, so that's a pretty strong structure. A nice rigid structure. And the floors get peeled away from it, and then it, poof, turns to dust. And you can see slide 69, we'll see that dustifying again. The fainting one. 69.
Okay.
And when you're finished with that one, go ahead and go to slide 70.
Here's 69.
Okay. You see that it's peeled away like a banana.
That's a perfect explanation for it. There's a core, and then it looks like two peels coming off the sides, and then the column that's left, which would be the banana, just basically vaporizes, dustifies.
Or dustifies. Right. Vapor implies high heat, and we don't have any evidence of high heat.
There you go. Okay.
See, words that already have a meaning that don't apply, we can't use those.
Use that.
Because
that's right.
it's like assuming this haze is smoke, you assume the cause is fire.
Okay, you're right. So it dustifies.
Right. And if you look at slide 70, we see in the bottom row a series of images of the thing dustifying. So in the first image, you see, after the banana peel has taken place, you see the crisp edges. And then it comes to a point where it no longer has crisp edges, and you see a whole lot of dust there, like a silhouette of it.
So what we're watching, folks, is we're watching a physical structure of steel, of concrete, just dustifying right before our eyes.
And those two images at the top are from across the river. They're sort of 90 degrees from those other one, from the fainting one. And you can see that cluster, it's got dust coming off it and it pours down. And then it just, you see it gets fuzzy and goes away. And if you go to slide 71, it shows the sequence where you see there's these crisp edges and that they're no longer crisp edges, and it's just dust.
So no matter from which angle you look at this, it's not a visual anomaly. This is actually dustification. This is actually a structure turning to dust.
Well, it could also be, camera trickery if you had one angle. I mean, there's a possibility, and I thought about that in the beginning. But if you look at the multiple angles and you see this steel in midair turn to dust, I mean, it's unquestionable from multiple angles.
Go ahead and move to slide 72. And some more from across the river, and we see, you can look how crisp the edges are. But you see the up above part, there's no hazy dust cloud around it. And again, if that dust that you see later had settled on it, when is it settling on it? Because it's crisp edges there. Mm-hmm. If it's so fine that it hangs in the air, how did it settle on a vertical column? You even see the detail of little like stringies and wires or whatever hanging off of it, rebar and so forth.
Mm. Every time I see this, it's just as dramatic.
And at the base of this of stairwell B, you had 14 people survive and walk out on their own. There's two other people above them that survived, even though the building around them didn't.
Dr. Judy, where is stairwell B relative to that column right there?
I think it's right below. I think that's right. Stairwell B is in the middle of the core of the building, and that's where I believe this is. I can't be absolutely sure, but these are core columns. It's some. If it isn't stairwell B, it's adjacent to it.
But even still, above stairwell B, there was that amount of steel above it anyway.
Yeah. And so the people right below that, walked out. They saw blue sky.
Wow. So folks, what we're seeing is really a building that is turning to dust before our very eyes. At least the visual part of the building that we can see. To be fair.
Right, and if you start looking at all of it, then now might be good to back up to slide 15 and slide 16. Go ahead and
Okay.
Because to get a lay of the land of what it all looks like there.
Okay. Let me scroll up. And you say 15, 16?
16, yep.
Okay. And we are there. There we go.
Okay. And you see WTC1 and WTC2, and then down below you see WTC3, which would be the biggest building for most towns. And then you see Bankers Trust. And let's say you go to work one nice late summer morning, and you're going to go into your office right down there. And you're going to look out your window, about from the 20th floor, and you're going to see, Tower 1 across the street, right?
Right.
All right. Let me know when it gets up to the next. You're looking out from there, like, whoops, where'd the tower go? Imagine this. This is an intact window, double pane window, in an office. You don't see dust on the windowsill. You're looking out, and there was a building across the street, a 110-story building, and it's gone away.
And the glass still has a reflection.
Right.
Clean windowsill, no broken windows.
Surgical precision like that.
That's directed. It's one of the directed geographically as well as directed in terms of instructions. If you click that again, we can zoom out and look where Building 4 is, and we're going to go back in and look the other direction, and the main body of Building 4, a 9-story building, just went missing. If you had binoculars, you could probably see what was on somebody's desk inside that, that sliver of the north wing that's left.
I have a question. Doug, do you know how many buildings came down on 9/11?
One away. We're destroyed.
Right, yes, I apologize. How many buildings away on 9/11, Doug?
I'm glad I'm not the only one. How about how about 4? 4?
I say 3.
7. All buildings with the WTC prefix were destroyed that day. And, Building 4 wasn't hit by an airplane, and neither was Building 3.
No, 7.
Right. Neither was Building 6.
No.
Went missing. Large portions of it went missing.
Now, the buildings that were 1, 2, and 7 were completely destroyed. 4, 5, and 6. I know 6 had a huge hole in the middle of it, but there was some structure left standing.
Right. The middle 50% or so went missing, and almost all of Building 3 went missing. As we saw right at the beginning, that little stub in one corner was all that was left. The rest just isn't there.
You're right. I mean, not that you needed to say that. You're right. 7 buildings.
And in this one, we're seeing, the main body of Building 4 went missing, and some of the north wing went missing, and then there's just that little sliced off part. Look, an X-Acto knife sliced it off that's left. That didn't look like a collapse to me. It looks like when I was a little tyke, our family drove through Topeka, Kansas, right after that horrendous tornado, and there was I thought it was an apartment building, but I think it really was a dorm. It looked just like that, and I could look at it and see a bed that was still made up with some magazines on the bedspread and some books on the dresser, and clothes hanging in the closet undisturbed. This tornado just sliced off half the building, and you could look right in, and that's what that reminds me of. It wasn't any effects of a huge wind. It was just like it sliced. It was like an energy field that just sliced off the building.
Wow. All right, Dr. Wood, if I can, I know we're getting through. We're about halfway through the program. I don't want to leave people hanging at the end. So, but prior to the justification here, should we get into?
But first, Pete, you want to just go to slide 17 so people can get a layout of what parts went missing and how Building 6, the middle approximate 50% went missing. And
there we go.
Thanks. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, I didn't know if you wanted to get. Right now, we're almost at the halfway point, and I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to, So, should we? I've got a question about the people inside, and this is particularly personal to me. The people jumping out of the windows. Should we address the jumpers at this point?
We could.
I don't want to go out of order, so
Oh, maybe from slide 17, we just do this cluster here to also get a lay of the land about how little material was left.
Okay.
So, like, after that one that we, of the holes from the top view, we see this lay of the land, and if you click on that, you can see there's an arrow that pops in showing the front door of WTC1. And, if we don't get, through everything covered, that's fine. Getting the most important stuff, that there's a lack of debris, lack of seismic signal, and lack of busted bathtub, ends up being quite important. But this arrow, we're going to go look right where that orange arrow is on slide 18, and then when we go to slide 19, that's what was right where that orange arrow is pointing. And here we have this ambulance. It looks like it's in perfect condition, except maybe the door. It wasn't clobbered with anything. You don't see any steel wheat checks around. There were some, but you're looking at like the north wall and the south wall of the north tower, and you can see maybe stairwell B in there, a little bit of it. But where's the material for the building?
Well, Dr. Wood, one would say, well, it's underground. One would say it fell into and filled up the bathtub or the basin or the underneath the building, under the underground portion.
We can go down and look at that. If we go to the next slide, we can see that the newscast of Peter Jennings the next day, with talking to George Stephanopoulos on the scene. You have to
Norm. And today, George, I don't know if you heard a little earlier me raise this question, which was actually raised by ABC's Jackie Judd, as we look at these areas on below. And it's a video where the towers used to stand, and where is all the rubble gone? And have you been able to is there any way you can answer that question?
I'm sorry, Peter, I didn't get the question.
Okay, I apologize. Jackie Judd and several other people keep asking us, when you look at where the towers used to stand, there is surprisingly so little rubble. Where did all the rubble go?
It's a very good question, Peter, and I have asked some people who've been doing some of the rescue and recovery work this morning. If you look behind me, you can see the very remains, the skeletal remains of the World Trade Center. And one volunteer, Robert Gerlinsky, explained to me the reason there's so little rubble is that all of it simply fell down into the ground and was pulverized, evaporated.
As I say, you have to feel sorry for him because his job is to tell the world what's going on, and that's the best he can do.
I don't blame him.
Right. It's like where is but what they were both documenting is the lack of debris.
Right. Wow.
I remember Julie and Pataki saying that everything was pulverized. I remember those words specifically right on 9/11, within 24 hours afterwards.
Well, Judy, would you pulverize? Is that an accurate statement?
No, pulverize is a grinding. Like a mechanical process, friction, something pushing against something else. We're getting a rock and hammering it on top of another rock. It's going to break up into bits. That's going to be pulverized. This is something different, and so it needs a different term. So whatever happened to the building is the definition of dustification. So we know the word's correct because we need a new word. This had particles down to the size of DNA. You don't get that through pulverization.
Okay.
And
okay. Good.
If you go to slide 21, we're going to look at where some survivors remained in the base of Building 3 and the base of Tower 1, and we're also going to go look below ground. I don't know if we want to hear the firefighters who were at the base of Tower 1 when they survived. What do you think, Pete? Is that video good or?
Sure.
All right. So that's slide 22.
It's just a tremendous roar and
All right. Sorry about that.
Oh, and he'll talk about how being lifted up. You don't get lifted up by a wind pushing you down the stairs.
What would cause that? Or is that Can I ask that question at this point? I mean,
the levitation. Well, we just note that there's testimony of being picked up, and his helmet also came off, and there's various other testimonies like that.
Oh,
There you go.
It was just a tremendous roar, and above, and it sounded like it was coming towards you, and then the wind, very, very fierce wind, and my helmet started lifting me up off the ground, and so that's when I crouched down. The next thing I just crouched down. I got to the corner of the staircase by the railing, and I just got as small as I could possibly get. Because I'm not a big guy to begin with, so fortunately I'm not. So I got, and I literally, I guess the best way to describe it, I tried to crawl into my fire helmet. That's what I wanted to do, just to protect myself. And I wasn't sure what was going on. I thought the building might down, as I figured, and I was a little angry. I got, so like, why me? Why, it's beautiful. I'm going to die in a World Trade Center on a beautiful summer morning. It's like a little denial and disbelief sets in, and so then I started getting hit with stuff. This debris was hitting me, and it went dark, and then the next thing was just total silence. Nothing. A wind, a noise, a light, nothing. And then I started hearing noises. I started hearing like moaning, and guys were starting to communicate, yell out. These were the guys that I was trapped with. They're calling out, who's there, you guys are right, blah, 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 this kind of thing. And I realized there was other people. I wasn't alone, Because when you're alone in a situation like that, you talk about like existential isolation. It's like, and when you find that you're with other people, it makes you feel a lot better. Even though you're in a very bad situation, there's these other people. But then the strangest thing happened. This beam of sunlight came right in on us, like about 8 inches long, but it was clearly sunlight. It was all dirty and full of debris. It looked like pepper was floating around in it, sort of. But it was sunlight. I'm like amazed now. It's a 110-story building above us, and I'm looking up at the sun.
Looking at wow.
I had no idea where you were. There was no way to tell north, south, east, west. It was just the whole atmosphere was full of debris and papers and smoke, and there was no landmarks. There was no way to make a reference point. You couldn't see the sun anymore. The sun had gone away because the sunlight that had come in now was gone, and so there was no way to tell which way you were going.
That's interesting.
And they're at the base of that picture that's showing next to the video. They're at the base of that. At that moment, that picture was taken.
That man should be about paper thin.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and another one from there, talked about that. He's looking up at blue sky. There's nothing above us. That big building doesn't exist. He says these were the biggest office buildings in the world, and I didn't see one desk, one chair, one phone, nothing. And another one described walking out into an empty football field.
At minimum, he should be pancaked and pulverized.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. And his, listening to him I've seen an interview before, but listening to him in light of the evidence that we're talking about right now, it throws a whole different perspective on his conversation, on his description of what's taking place.
Right, because you're trying to fit it into the normal situation, which is what he was, trying to do. And go ahead.
Douglas, I'm sorry to interrupt. Have you ever heard someone tell you, because they told me this, that nukes or explosives were used?
Yes.
Did somebody say that?
Oh, sure.
I always go back to this guy who was right in the middle of those so-called nukes or explosives, potentially. If that were the case, how could they have ever survived that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even a conventional explosion. I have law enforcement people who've survived conventional explosions, and at that level, at that location, no.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, as I kind of jokingly say, is it Ride 'em Cowboy, riding on top of the nuke?
Oh, yeah, Dr. Strangelove type thing? Okay.
Yeah, it's you don't sit on top of a nuke. If there's a nuke in the basement underneath these guys, it just, none of them talked about feeling like they were burning up.
Wow. All right. So now we have the eyewitness, a very significant eyewitness account of somebody that's inside the tower. And by all rights, he should have been flattened. Now, one could say, well, miracles happen. But for him to describe what he saw, being in the position he was, it sounds to me like everything just turned to dust above him, and that space opened up, and miraculously he saw the sky. So,
and it turns out that's all that was left. Is just that part of stairwell B that those guys were in.
Okay.
And people above it. Well, there was two people above them that also survived. One guy was the 9/11 surfer. Like he rode down the wave, and he landed on top of that stairwell B, right above those guys.
On 23, by the way.
Okay. Let me go to 25. Unless you think we should also do that long video on 24. Yeah, 23, it's good that it shows, like, what Jay Jonas was saying about...
On the floor, it was not only making noise, but it would cause tremendous vibration. So we're being bounced up and down off the floor, hearing this collapse coming closer and closer. Mickey Cross was caught on the second floor. My helmet started flying off my head. I had forgotten to snap my helmet. So I grabbed my helmet. I guess instinctually, I just pulled myself down in the corner. The collapse of the North Tower created a massive rush of air. I was blown down 6 stories down to the first floor, and all I could remember while I was being blown down was, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. There wasn't any time to think about anything. The 110-story tower disintegrated in just 10 seconds.
It was that fast, yet for me it was kind of slow motion too at the same time. And I remember thinking to myself, I said, oh shit, this is it, we didn't make it.
Faced with what seemed like certain death, the trapped firemen thought their last thought and prepared to die.
In those 10 seconds, I was like, well, I'm 33, what have I done with my life? Worked almost all the time. My wife was going to, be a widow now. And I pretty much saw myself. Pretty much saw my funeral. I saw everybody at the wake at my funeral, and my parents and family there.
You think about everything, I guess, that you haven't done in your life, and you realize that, is this it? Or are you going to make it out of here? And I was just too young, and I have too much more to do with my life than for this to be it.
I thought I was going to be dead in a few seconds, and I remember feeling, I hope this is fast, because I had a fear of being trapped, like say with a broken back or really injured, and still being conscious and alive.
It was strange, but I was at peace when the collapse actually started. It's not what was going to happen now. It's going to happen. I hope it doesn't hurt so much, but the fear was gone.
The collapse of the North Tower killed over 1,300 people trapped inside the building. Some of the concrete walls encasing Stairway B had remained intact, and enclosed within them, 14 people were still alive. They opened their eyes. It seemed as if a miracle had happened.
I could hear Mike. I could hear him groaning. I could hear him called out to me. I called out to him. So I knew he was alive.
From the neck up, I seemed okay, but everything else was just like pins and needles. And then I was slapping my leg with my arm. I'm watching my arm hit my leg, but I can't feel it. I had my flashlight on my side, and I looked and looked at my hands and looked at myself to see if I was bleeding or anything anywhere. When he heard noises around him, Captain St. Jonas realized he too had somehow survived the disaster.
I wanted to know who was still alive, and I started calling them out by name.
All right. So what do we make of this? What do we make of that, Dr. Wood?
And they all walked out on their own.
Wow.
And so they didn't get cooked. They didn't get blown apart. They didn't get, smashed, squashed. The building just disintegrated. As they said in the video, it disintegrated in 10 seconds. I think they actually was working on it before then, but
500,000 tons of debris above them was gone.
The only way I can in my mind resolve this is there's a big difference of standing at the bottom of all of this and getting hit in the head by a cinder block, if you will, versus maybe a cup of flour or a cup of dustified cement, concrete, whatever. That would be the difference. Is that not kind of what we're looking at?
yeah, if you got hit with a cinder block, you wouldn't be walking out on your own.
Correct. Now, that's not to say that there was complete dustification. Obviously, we saw
right.
the wheat checks from the facade and some other stuff, but the majority of the material was dustified that fell to the ground.
Especially right around these fellows.
Right.
And it was also interesting to pick up these other details, like the fellow who said he was blown down 6 stories. Well, how do you get blown down 6 stories? You go thud, 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 thud as you go around the landing, because you have to keep going around to get down. It makes you really wonder if they were, levitated down. But how are they going to perceive that? They're going to perceive it as being blown down.
Right. As I would indicate in a conversation, just having a conversation, blown down 6 floors, not really comprehending the fact that there would be twists and turns of the stairway.
And you're slamming into the landing each time. And there's a woman who talked about, she assumed she had died and God was carrying her down the stairs because how else could she have floated down the stairs? People interpret things the best they can with, the knowledge they have. And if they've never experienced, a lack of gravity or anti-gravity, they don't know, how to fit that into their image of the world. But you can see hints of this. Like there's other indications, like upside-down cars and strange things like that. That you can't explain that by a big wind. With nothing really was blown over. There wasn't evidence of a huge wind.
That was one issue, and whenever you are ready to discuss that was one thing I did see. The vehicles.
Okay,
it was
just finish this part right here. If we go to the next slide, because this covers the below ground issue. If slide 25 is the first level right below ground, and we're going to go down and look right below ground, right where that arrow shows. And if you click when you need to get to. Yep. And you see those dots where they're the first responders are walking, the rescue people, and then click till you get to slide 26, and you can see them walking right there. You see innovation luggage and Hallmark cards, and that punched-in part at the end is right under that missing part of Building 4. And we can also go another couple of stories below there to loading docks. Now, right above them is ground level. You have stuff knocked off the shelves, of course, and the drop ceiling has lights dropping out of it, but it's, they're still walking upright.
Were they in the complex area, the plaza at the time of the...
This is right afterwards. They're going to look they're going to rescue people. These are the people who flew in from Florida, and, you can see it on their shirts.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
The rescue guys, and they're, upright walking in to see if they can find any survivors.
All right. So right above them would be ground level.
Right. If you click to the next one, you can see where they had been walking. And right, by the edge of Building 4. Now we're going to go a couple of stories down below that. And so the delivery folks know where they are. It's color-coded. It's purple under Building 5, and it's green under Building 4. So when we look down the aisle, we'll know where we are. And this picture we're coming to was taken after 9/11. We click to slide 28. You have more dust down there probably than usual, but the lights are still on. And look down at the end, that green part at the hall, right at the end where you have to turn to go out, so you don't hit a wall.
We're in quite deep. These are the first pictures of search crews underneath the World Trade Center, desperately looking for survivors.
I don't know where that was recorded. It probably wasn't here, but it's in some part where it's even an empty parking garage. A full parking garage wouldn't have such a nice echo.
I noticed that. Okay.
And that green part at the end of this hallway is right under where Building 4 went missing.
What is that green?
It's just painted green, so you're under the area of Building 4.
Okay.
They color-coded it for the loading dock, so the delivery folks know where to park, where to look for the right store.
All right. Thank you. I didn't know what I was looking at there. Okay. So that's all right. Very good.
And if you click on the next one, and you'll see they're right above ground.
120 dump trucks last night. These are the first pictures of search crews underneath the World Trade Center, desperately looking for survivors. Already been removed, and it'll be done by barge all throughout the day today.
Anyway, and that's all right. We don't probably need to play the audio anyway. Slide 29, but you can see right through the complex. You see where stairwell B is. That's where those guys survived. And look up the blue sky. But you can look all the way through the complex at ground level. This is right after the event. This is probably the next day. FEMA logged in this photo on the 13th, so it was taken on the 12th or the 13th.
Okay. Wow.
And where's the debris? That globe in the middle was in the fountain that was on the plaza. And another thing interesting you notice here, the plaza was covered with cement blocks, but now you see it covered with dirt. Where all the dirt come from?
Yeah.
And it's bringing up that point that where dirt come from overnight.
It didn't go underground, and here we are looking at ground level. So where did the towers go?
Not above ground, not below ground.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Where did the towers go? And that's, of course, the name of tonight's broadcast. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann Report. Special guest Pete Santilli and Dr. Judy Wood, author of Where Did the Towers Go? Very aptly named. Dr. Wood, go ahead and continue.
Where did you want to go from here?
Well, I was interested in a couple of things. The
toasted cars.
The toasted cars especially, yes. That.
Okay.
And people have to understand I don't even know how to describe it, but it's certainly the inconsistencies.
That's
how's that?
Slide 89. Well, if we look for consistencies, we'll find them. There is some consistencies. Look at slide 89.
Here we go. Toasted cars.
Yep. And the reason why I say toasted cars is, they're toast, they're history. It doesn't indicate how they got that way. Like if you say burnt cars, you're assuming it was fire. And I lost it.
What does toasted cars intimate then?
Well, it's my term for it. It's toast. It's history. You can't fix it. You get a new one. It's done with. If you say burnt cars, you're assuming fire to be the cause. So it's just my term for this is toast. That's toast. This got toasted. It's a word that, what I tried to do is words that came naturally that were unique to identify characteristics. Instead of saying characteristic 297-3A, that's hard to remember. You call it fuzzballs, call it toasting, or something happened to it.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Sure. It's a way of unbiasing, like a double-blind study, so to speak. If we look at slide 90, if you go to that, this is the car that was taking a picture of it on under FDR Drive. I don't know how it got there, but what I do know is that's strange. If you look at it, you see the trim that goes around the windows is kind of flopped over, like it turned to Jell-O, And you have a back tire that's intact, and it looks like an intact gas tank. The back end doesn't look affected, but something toasted that car.
Now, Joe and I were at this very spot. We know where this is relative to the towers. It seems as if there's a line of demarcation, or.
Well, I don't know where this was when it was toasted. Now there are some strange things, like there's some strange things on the Manhattan Bridge that an EMT said that they could feel the heat from the bridge, but that's like 3/4 of a mile away from the World Trade Center complex. So all they know, remember, know what you know that you know. I'm not going to make any assumptions about where this car came from, but what I can say is that's weird. And notice the flopped over, that window trim. It's just weird.
Okay.
And if we go to the next picture, and this one I call the wax spot car, as in, new wax job in the back end. Yeah, and if you click it once, you get a blow up of the first, the upper left corner, and you can see that the front half is totally toasted. Inside's totally toasted. Back end, in pristine condition as far as we can tell. So if that door were open and you had this rip-roaring fire going on inside, is it going to lap around that door? Yeah. How do you explain that abrupt line?
Right. I've never seen a car fire, and both Joe and I have investigated a lot of car fires, both arson and accidental. I've never seen that type of. It's almost as if. Well, I don't even know how to explain it. It's certainly the front or the front portion of the vehicle is, as you say, toasted. The back is pristine, and there's a definite separation between it.
And now look at the roof. So the roof lights, it's polycarbonate. If you had a rip-roaring fire inside, nice big oven toasting away there, why aren't the lights melted?
Wow.
Right here. Look at that. How could that be? It is not physically possible, is it?
Well, obviously it is, because there it happened.
And ladies and gentlemen listening to this, if you want to go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, courtesy of the Pete Santilli Show, you can see the slides we're talking about. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. You can see the slides that accompany this audio broadcast. Wow.
Please don't drive old run-a-wrecks around. You have cars that are in good condition, so you can pretty much assume that it had a nice rubber gasket around that door. Just put that into your thoughts.
Rubber gasket.
Yeah, rubber gasket, like for water seal and noise isolation.
I have one of those on my vehicle. I know.
And if it's torn, you hear road noise. And so, they probably have an intact rubber gasket before this happened to it. So if you click.
But yet the lights, once again, I've got to, just for those listening to this and not having the benefit of seeing this, you've got a car without rubber gaskets in the doors.
Well, we don't know. I'm just saying that probably had that to begin with, and just to realize that might be a pattern here.
Okay, but the lights, the polycarbonate lights are on top in good order, basically.
Right.
Okay. All right.
And notice there's no scraps of glass around the lip of the windshield. No seal left. This almost looks wire brushed, ready for a new paint job.
Good eye, by the way.
Now, if you click again, we see the other side of that car. This is why I call it the wax spot car, because it's got this spot on it. It looks like wax job just in that spot. Fire doesn't do that. It looks like somebody masked something out in the darkroom. This was an aha moment for me. If you have some type of interference of energy fields, you might be able to get that, but a regular fire does not totally toast something and then have an abrupt line and 1 nanometer over in pristine condition.
Wow. All right, folks, notice that Dr. Wood is presenting evidence, physical evidence, and has not come to any or not made any definitive conclusions about what this evidence suggests at this point.
And when you collect enough evidence, then the evidence tells you what happened if you listen to it. And we also noticed that the trunk lid is popped open. So I've noticed that trend on a lot of vehicles, like it affects the door latches and trunk latches, it seems. So if you go to the next slide, you can see where these vehicles were distributed around town. Now, those ones that I showed you that were found under FDR Drive, I don't know how they got there, but there were some at the South Street Seaport where a first responder, saw him go into apparent spontaneous combustion, and he had to rationalize. He said, well, it must have been a fireball that got loose from the World Trade Center, rolled down the hill and hit these cars, because why else would they go into spontaneous combustion? So he witnessed those ones lighten up. And again, on the Manhattan Bridge, first responder somewhere on the Manhattan Bridge said it's so hot you could feel the heat from the bridge. But it wasn't conventional heat. It was something that was perceived as heat. It's another piece of the puzzle. And that area just north of Tower 1 and 2, that whole long, 4 blocks, every single car was toasted along there. But no trees were toasted. There was unburned paper. No buildings were toasted. And then there was the car park.
By the way, this slide right here got me, in your book, this illustration really got me wondering.
The map?
Yes. If you,
there may have been other ones in between. I just put what I've, noticed, what I have images of.
Okay. All right. Wow.
And we do know that remember the one we're reading, the body language? They just came out of their hiding places. That was between the car park and the towers, that intersection. And you saw it was just unburned paper on the ground. Why does the car park light up? Which is, bizarre. So if we go to the next slide, slide 93, you'll see this toasted bus. But you'll notice there's no scorch marks on it. Something happened to it. And again, every car up and down there, but not the trees. You got lights on in the building, and if you look way down the end on the left, where see where it says post office, right beyond the E of post office, you see a traffic light. That it's a green light.
And Doug, let me point this out because I caught this probably the third time I saw it. See this tree right here?
Yeah.
The leaves on the tree. So whatever fire caused these vehicles to catch on fire, quote unquote, to spontaneously combust, it wasn't enough to catch this tree on fire and burn these leaves?
And you see Building 7 is still healthy looking, so we know it's not 5:20 p.m. yet. And actually around 4 p.m. is when you get something start pouring out the side of that building. So this is probably sometime early afternoon. And if you click again, there's an arrow that comes down and shows this car right behind the bus. It has, it looks like rust on it already.
Mm-hmm.
Car steel these days is made to be pretty environmentally resistant. And and if you go to, you can skip the next one, the Diane Sawyer one, and go to the one where the guys, the car after car one, where you can see that. Notice that the cars are missing door handles and traces of glass around where the glass windows are missing, in the corners. We're just noticing patterns and resisting coming to assumptions. There's that video of...
Okay. And that's key, folks. Don't make any assumptions yet. Dr. Wood is... Consider this like a trial, if you will. In a courtroom environment where Dr. Wood is presenting evidence and no conclusions, just evidence.
Indisputable evidence.
Yep.
It's hard to dispute images like this. Okay, so we've got flipped cars.
And if you go to 97, you can see a bunch of ones around there, and you can see bushy trees. But you notice that the front end of the car, like especially the bottom left-hand corner where there's an arrow pointing, in front of the front door, the driver's door, you see, all toasted, and the hood's toasted, the side piece is toasted, but the driver's door isn't toasted. And you look at the van across from it, the hood's missing. And the car in the bottom picture in the bottom right corner, the hood's missing of that minivan.
The entire grill, hood and grill, the whole front. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
And if you the picture in the upper right corner, notice in the distance you see a trunk lid popped open, and then you see the van in the middle of the street that has the door, popped open, and something weird with the back door. And the hood looks like under the hood something weird happened with the one on the edge, but the one in the foreground, notice around the lip of the windshield, it's spanking clean, like it's ready for a new paint job, like it's been sandblasted.
Where there would be a rubber type of a gasket or seal around that, right?
Right. And do you see any scraps of window glass in that car?
No.
That is weird to me. The picture in the upper left corner, you see a mail truck that's kind of slumped over, and the police car in the foreground, in the bottom right corner of that photo, again, we have the back end is toasted, but the door is not, like right around where, you might have an insulator of a rubber gasket.
Right.
And rubber gaskets don't insulate regular thermal fires.
Not too well.
And by the way, paper everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Unburned paper.
Unburned paper.
And I don't know if I should point it out, in the upper left-hand photo, it looks like a body part on the ground there. Why would that be way up there? And it's just, if you don't have, we don't have reports of people being toasted in their vehicles, but there's evidence that the vehicles became toasted right after the building's demise. Several of the first responders said, it was right afterwards that the dust went up and blocked out 100% of the sunlight. They couldn't see their hand in front of their face, but thank goodness this car in front of them just lit up because then they could see where they were. So it lit up right afterwards. So that's a pattern too.
All right, and I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind. So you had the lack of visibility because of the particulate matter in the air, right? But yet we were able to get, or people were able to get their bearings because of flames or fired vehicle fires.
Right.
All right, folks, you're listening to Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We're up against the top of the hour break. Very special guest, Mr. Peter Santilli, The Pete Santilli Show, and, of course, Dr. Judy Wood, author of Where Did the Towers Go? That's the question we're asking right now. Where did the towers go? We're going to be back in about 2 minutes for the final hour of this very special program. Stay with us. Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the Internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies at work right there in your neighborhood: KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
Doug Hagmann. One guy that doesn't need a bullhorn to get your attention.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, listeners from coast to coast, viewers worldwide, to a very special broadcast of the Hagmann Report. This is the 26th day of February 2013. Very special guest, Dr. Judy Wood. WhereDidTheTowersGo.com and DrJudyWood.com, and Pete Santilli, host extraordinaire of the Pete Santilli Show. That's PeterSantilli.com. All links accessible via our home site at HomelineSecurityUS.com, along with the video presentation, the PowerPoint presentation. Pete and Dr. Wood, welcome back to our third and final hour. I guess we've got to kind of get to the grist of this. Now and folks, listening to this, Dr. Wood is laying out evidence as one would in a trial, and I know. People are always looking for this immediate fix. They go right to what's the end of the story? If it lasts more than 30 seconds, I can't handle it. You've done a great job methodically laying out evidence. You're not talking about conclusions. You're not talking about spaceships landing. You're not talking about anything except a very narrow set of physical, or very narrow offering of physical evidence, which is as it should be in an intellectual, honest discussion. And I really appreciate that. So where do we go from here, Dr. Wood?
Well, we have slide 101. Don't know if that's up. And this is up past where the towers were, but notice there's a sea of unburned paper in between. So why are just the vehicles lighting up there?
Oh.
Nothing else is igniting. It's this pattern. And a lot of folks, my detractors say, well, cars were towed. Well, these cars I know were not towed. Same with the ones on West Broadway. I call it the swamp. You can see why. The one with the toasted bus.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah, they wouldn't toast the bus and dump and then tow it there and dump it. So if we go to slide 102, we can see where that toasted car lot is relative to the towers. And the picture on the left shows where they were before the building was toasted.
Okay.
And then if we go on to slide 103, there's a closer look. And there was a car out there in the aisle. We'll look at a little bit closer, that's black. And I thought it was white until I found this picture. And if you click again, you'll find, you'll see the people who were evacuating from the embassy suites. And again, you see that black car out there in the aisle. Those cars aren't toasted yet. And then when you go to slide 105, you'll see they've been toasted, and they're still in the same place. So we see them before, during, and after toasting.
Wait a minute. Oh, yeah.
They weren't towed there.
Let's back up like I always do. Would you like to, Doug?
Oh, please. Run that by me one more time.
Well, you could even go back to 100 where you show the map, where the parking lot is from the building, if that helps.
Wow. All right, so we have...
And you see the sea of unburned paper.
Okay, here we have the sea of unburned paper. Here's the tower before, and then here's the lot with no dust in it, right? Here's that black car. We're going to zoom in on it, right? Right down here.
Right there.
This is the lot. All these cars are all intact. They're sitting right here.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Now let's zoom in a little bit further. Here are the cars. Nothing has, the towers have not met their demise as of yet, right?
Right.
Here's this vehicle. Here are these people filing out.
Okay.
The cars sitting right here.
Yeah.
Zoom in once again. Here they are. And then here is the lot.
What in the world am I looking at? I mean, I know what I'm looking at, but what?
They're toasted.
How do we explain this?
Well, how do you explain that those cars, whatever energy caused them to toasted the cars, but not the paper anywhere? That's interesting. That's probably the most impactful to me.
So here's a suggestion. Remember the rubber gasket I was pointing out that goes around the door that would insulate, from electricity or magnetism or something, the front door from the back door?
Right.
Where it wouldn't stop a regular fire. Now, cars are up on rubber tires. Let's say there's some sort of a charge in the atmosphere that builds up in the cars and they can't discharge quickly enough.
Okay.
That would explain why, if you notice signposts are not toasted, buildings aren't, trees aren't, they're grounded pretty well. The cars are not significantly grounded.
Well, aren't they grounded by their rubber tires?
Rubber is not very conductive. It's like a rubber insulator.
All right. You can tell. You can tell my brain's looking for a rational explanation here, right?
Right. Does that work for you so far?
It does.
And I even know somebody who can reproduce that same effect and has the same results.
Go on. You got me.
Okay. Well, we'll just put that aside. It's just going with that idea. Okay. And let's see. You want to go to 106? Yeah, weird fires. Let's do weird fires. And if you go to 107, we're going to look at that West Broadway. I often refer to it as the swamp. And if you go to 108, you see this toasted fire truck. And that door, Patrick Connolly ducked in there when one of the towers was coming apart, and he came out, and he said that you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, and then thank goodness that car went into, lit up and went to spontaneous combustion, or apparent spontaneous combustion. And if you go to slide 109, and note that, are you going to have debris on fire falling down just in that canyon? Does it land on the buildings to the left or to the right? So you're going to say that it just fell down that canyon. It only fell on vehicles. And it was, and also the roofs of the cars weren't necessarily toasted. There's something that affected just the vehicles. And Patrick Connolly walked out from point A there, walked up to intersection C and turned. And when he turned, you can see the cars. The next image is, you see it at 110. firefighters are walking through these apparent fires, and they're not concerned about anything. Just, I'm going for lunch break.
Wow. All right.
And on the left, you see a sea of unburned paper and just the vehicles toasting.
Okay, for those just listening, we're looking at a vehicle in flames, surrounded by what, Joe?
Paper. And firefighters walking through.
And trees with leaves on them, by the way. Once again.
Or paper hung on the trees that isn't burning.
Right.
Even the most hardened skeptic would have a very difficult time explaining. I mean, not even the hard. Boy, I've got a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
Are you telling me that canyon only, the debris, flaming debris only hit the vehicles, and it went around the trees that were overhanging over the cars? No, the signposts are fine.
We're on 111. I'm sorry.
Okay. And, hot things glow, but not everything that glows is hot. Just because you see something glowing. Now, think of an incandescent light bulb versus a fluorescent light bulb. They both glow. One's hot and one's not.
Okay.
And if you click that, you see this temperature chart that aluminum melts. Often people are shown those pictures on the left to get them to memorize cue cards. But if you think about it, if it's something that's white hot, it's hot because it's glowing because it's hot. If it's white hot, that's at least 1,200 degrees centigrade. And iron melts way above that. So if in that photo, if stuff is that hot, why isn't the paper burning? That glowing stuff is sitting on paper. And if you click again, it shows that aluminum melts at around 660 centigrade. So if that aluminum is glowing because it's hot, it should be a puddle. Because aluminum melts before it gets to glowing white hot.
Okay.
And so this is obviously it's glowing. That's aluminum cladding. It's glowing for a reason other than because it's hot.
Do I dare ask now why it's glowing?
Hot things glow, but not everything that glows is hot. Okay, if you go to 112, and you can see a blow-up of the corner of that piece of aluminum cladding. Yeah, so we know that aluminum would be a puddle if it was glowing that color because it was hot.
Right.
And you see that called Cheetos? I don't know what it is. These little, they look like the snack food Cheetos, and they're glowing. That was my way of saying that it's not, hot glowing metal pieces, just so that you identify that characteristic. These little squirmy things that, they look like Cheetos.
And note the paper, right? It's glowing near the paper. Yeah.
And we click this. This would get the audio from the thing.
It's the firefighters reporting molten metal like a slurry or a steel mill or a volcano. Those are quotes. Giant pools.
What about the pictures of them dragging oxygen hoses all over the steaming supposed hot metal? If it were that hot, you wouldn't dare do that, would you?
Well, we do have the infrared photos of the molten metal.
Well, again, what melted the metal? Was it heat?
That's a good question.
That was Jesse Ventura and Alex+Jones, by the way, folks.
And Jesse Ventura had read my book, and this image really, hit a spot with him, because here you have this oxy-fuel hose draped over the ground with these, iron workers at the other end holding this welding kind of torch-looking thing, and you know that it can't be that hot there. Are you going to be holding the end of a hose over? You don't run an oxy-fuel hose over something that's 1,200 degrees.
No, Pete, you can. Here. Hold this for me, Pete. I gotta run an errand.
Yeah, you sit at the end of that thing.
Wow.
And if we go to the next picture, remember that famous USGS picture? I'm not saying it's fake, but I'm saying that orange stuff there is not the temperature they say it is. They have some chart. It's interpreting something, but it's not regular thermal heat. Because here at point E, it says it's 819 degrees Fahrenheit on their chart, and you got a lake there. You got guys walking knee-deep water. Water boils at 212 Fahrenheit. So at 819, I mean, it doesn't look like a boiled chicken. The firefighter wading through there.
So the top left is a USGS thermal.
Yeah, it was I think a NASA satellite image or something like that. And it went through USGS, and then it went to JPL. It went through 3 different hands. It were interpretations of various things, but what they came up with, a lot of people cite this, is claiming that it's super hot there, but we know it can't be because you look at it. This is the afternoon of 9/11. It was a broken water main on West Street, and it just flooded the street.
Wow.
And you see where Building 3 is, that little stub of a building left.
Right. Our eyes deceive us. No, our eyes don't deceive us. People do. We're looking at, with the exception of that one image there, we're looking at...
If you go to 114, that also hits it again. You have bushy trees that aren't burned, and you have, this is at West Broadway again, you have unburned paper, a sea of unburned paper, but just the cars are toasted. Buildings aren't toasted, paper's not toasted. But like a lot of the cars in that street. And you hear various stories like, the steel-toed boots melting of the first responders. Well, boots were coming apart for some reason. They were saying it was 1,100 degrees on the pile, and their boots were melting in just a couple hours. Well, if my steel oven is melting, the turkey inside is more than well done. but we didn't have any reports of burned feet. And, I don't blame the people who are saying this. There's slide 117, these FEMA workers. It's that people keep asking, it's the tendency of human beings. We keep asking questions till we get an answer. And in an emergency kind of situation, you don't stop and ask it, consider if that makes sense. You just grab it and move on. Also, you don't drive hydraulic equipment over a grill. It's, I think, 82 degrees centigrade is the maximum operating temperature before it takes on permanent damage to the hydraulics.
So what am I seeing here?
Something, think of plasma. There's plasma that exists that is not at high temperature. And think of a fluorescent light bulb. Those are things we know about. People are assuming an incandescent bulb because they know that glows, but a fluorescent bulb also glows, but for a different reason.
Right.
And then the next, slide 117, that's the famous, just repeating the answer, steel-toed boots melting. And these aren't material scientists. They're FEMA workers. They do the best they can.
Like the ones working in the hotspot.
Steel-toed boots is one of the biggest things. Steel-toed boots. Out on the rubble, it's still, I believe, 1,100 degrees. Guys' boots just melt within 2 hours.
Can you walk on a grill without cooking? That's 1,100 degrees. But these people just kept repeating this, and they didn't stop to think, does that make sense? Like the next one is Rudy Giuliani, 118. How did he know the temperature?
There were fires 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit below the ground. I could be standing here, and you could be standing there, and I could be describing to you, Governor, the site, and then a fire would break out in between us. And it was just by luck or the design of God that we weren't killed.
How did you know the temperature?
Well, it could be 2,000 degrees because he isn't cooked. But what he's expressing is there was something that looked like that. There was a spontaneous combustion type of effect right between, him and the next person, and he couldn't explain it. He's not a material scientist. He's doing the best he can. He is explaining there's something weird that was going on there, because otherwise he looks like a total idiot. It's claiming that that he's standing on a debris field that's 2,000 degrees.
Dr. Wood and folks, I don't care who you are looking at this evidence being offered by Dr. Wood. I'll tell you something. This is mind blowing. Wow.
You want to go on to 121? You were told that the buildings collapsed from structural failure, too much weight on it. It was weakened from the heat. Well, if it's weakened from the heat, why are these remaining wheat checks standing straight as soldiers? Other than, where's the debris? Where's the material that's left? And this, big on the right, you see this big hole in the ground?
Right.
It's empty. And if you go to the images on the next page, you see that's how you expect something to buckle. It'd be bending around the horizontal axis if there was too much weight and failing due to too much weight being on it. But as we see in slide 123, the remaining wheat checks are rolled up like rolled up carpets, and that's curling around the vertical axis. The building's not loaded that way.
But not from weight, though, correct?
Right. That's what this says. The building did not fail from too much weight because I think everyone's familiar with stepping on a pop can, soda pop can. Sure. And the edges are wadded in and out, like bending around the horizontal axis. They don't curl up around the vertical axis. The circle of the can doesn't get into a tighter circle.
Right. Okay. And that's a good analogy.
And these outer wheat checks, they look like they're curled around the vertical axis.
Okay.
And if you go to slide 124, remember I used weird names. That one on the left, I call that the lasagna noodle. It doesn't look like a failed buckled column. When you stand on a soda pop can, it has sharp, kinky, buckles. It doesn't curl like that. That looks like it's a curling rhythm.
Exactly. Well, we've had breakfast and wheat checks. We've got snacks and Cheetos, and now our lasagna noodle for the main entree. But wow, look at that.
Those are burritos and other things. If we go ahead.
Chef Judy.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's someone who survived to the events of that day, and they said, anytime you're in New York, I'll be glad to take you out for burritos and tacos.
Oh, man. But yes. Okay, so what we're seeing here is certainly not what we were told, and I don't know how to describe it.
Go to slide 25. We're coming up, drum roll here. 125. And you see some of the steel columns, some of the core columns. Those are robust, beefy columns from the towers, and they're curled more than 180 degrees. How does that happen? And they also don't have any kinks in the corner. It's a smooth bend, no cracks. And a lot of folks have seen the big horseshoe column. These are very thick, robust columns, and that is mighty strange. And if you go to slide 126, you see from the Bankers Trust building, and it was said there was no fires in that building. Yet there's this image of this I-beam that looks crinkled up. And I challenge any engineer out there who's been through statics class, they know how to draw a free body diagram. Draw a free body diagram of that beam and show me the loading on it that would create that. I don't think you can do it. Not a mechanical loading. And already we've seen a lack of high heat, so you can eliminate, thermal energy. We've also seen building parts turning into dust in midair, and that eliminates any kind of kinetic energy weapon, like something hitting it. like a missile, a bullet, a wrecking ball. That doesn't cause things to turn into dust in midair.
127.
Yep, 127. You see the see-through holes there. Yeah, on the left, that's those are the buckling modes. It doesn't do what we saw happen on that. And if you skip to 129, we can see an example. One night I was, roaming around the internet, and I came upon a blog where I saw the reproduction of every single one of the phenomena that I had identified. Like, whoa, I got to go see this guy. And 129. And the image on the right is solid molybdenum, about 2.5 inches in diameter, maybe 3 inches, 2 3/4 inches, somewhere around there. And it's pretty much smooth. There's a little bit of a buckling in one of the corners, but this isn't buckling from failure. It's like the thing became jello and then it curled itself up. Like, sometimes you throw something in a fire and it curls up kind of funny. It's like that, but it's not heat related. And I got to go see, this guy and see what he puts together. So if you go to slide 130, I contacted this person and sent him this picture and said, does your neighborhood ever get to looking like this? So here we have a flip car in front of a toasted car. We have all the marble facade missing of the building behind it, but nothing else damage of the facade. And the window glass, we have the inner pane is still intact, while the outer pane's missing in some of them. And if you, with close-up shots, you can see it looks almost like a soldering iron poked holes through it thing. And it turns out he can cause levitation too.
Here we go, 131.
Yeah, that's from. Go ahead and play that.
And I picked up the camera just out of habit, and something in the back of my mind said, "Run, run, run." And never in 20 years of shooting in New York have I run from an assignment. But something in the back of my head just said, "Run." And as I hit the corner of Liberty Street, it was almost being picked up by a tornado, almost being picked up by me. So it was like being picked up by a black cloud. That black cloud had substance. It was like nice, but it had a solid feel to it. It was like gravel, hot gravel, and just picked me up and tossed me about a block. At one second I was running, and the next second I was airborne. And I lost my glasses, I lost my cell phone, I lost my pager, but managed to hold on to both cameras.
Huh.
And remember Mickey Cross talking about feeling like he was lifted up. Another one, the gust of wind came blowing down, but it lifted him up. And the other fellow talked about being blown down 6 stories. There's evidence of levitation here. There's.
Sorry.
And if you go to 132, slide 132, here's John Hutchison's work. He's got this toy boat and little tank, and he's got water droplets flying up, floating upward.
132?
Yep. That's his blog I tripped upon, this eccentric character in Vancouver, Washington, who tried reproducing the work of Nikola Tesla, T. Townsend Brown, and several others, and discovered some really weird stuff. And it's like, ooh, let's have some fun. What happens if you turn this knob and that knob, and had water levitating? But you'll find he reproduced every one of the effects. And these are just things we aren't taught in physics class or in our books, school books. We're taught about electricity, magnetism, and how they're interactive. Tesla brought about the hydroelectric power plants, and he discovered that if you move a conductor through a magnetic field, voila, you get electricity. And you learn from Cub Scouts that you're at that age that if you wrap a wire coil around a nail, plug it into a 9-volt battery, you have a magnet now. So we know those two things are interactive. It turns out that gravity is also affected by magnetism. There's some experiments done with that. So we can look at some of the other things. But first, let's talk about the weather. Number 135. Slide 135. Time to talk about the weather. What was the weather like on 9/11? You can't have a real good, crime scene analysis if you don't discuss what the weather conditions were, right?
That's right, and it was just a gorgeous day, not a cloud in the sky.
As nice as can be is what CBS said.
So can I ask you, when was the first time you learned about the weather that we're about to talk about? When was the first time you heard about this?
I had heard, it was, I don't know, maybe a year ago, but then when Dr. Judy's book, that blew me over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so within the last month or so?
Mm-hmm.
And this is there's a high pressure system moving in from the west, and there's something else moving in from the east. But let's click to 136.
Mm-hmm.
And there's meet Hurricane Aaron. This is the day before 9/11. You see this big band that was moving from the west eastward, and turns out Hurricane Aaron had been moving from the east westward. And if you click again, you'll see a recent storm, Hurricane Sandy. Kind of the same kind of pattern. So why did we hear about Sandy? We didn't hear about Aaron.
Well.
And the next one is Geraldo Rivera, who was celebrating 40 years of reporting on hurricanes. Said something pretty shocking. What is it?
I have been so attracted over the years to hurricane coverage, but there's risk involved. There is, the peril of not knowing what's going to happen, that adventure, and it's pitting yourself against an enemy. It's like war, only no one is shooting at you specifically. That's what the allure. But there is an area storm that the juices don't flow, and you look and check it out.
Remember that? When that?
Oh.
I watched that live.
And maybe a store on YouTube. You got to get up close and personal. And
this is Hurricane Ike, I think.
That was recent. That was wasn't this Rita?
You would know.
You know what? I think it was Rita. Rita in Galveston, Texas. Yeah. And obviously Katrina before that changed so many of our histories. It was so traumatic. And one funny thing I think of if only a hurricane had come on 9/11. Remember, they didn't know how to use instruments, the terrorists. They took off in Boston, and they literally, after they took over the aircraft, they steered by line of sight. And it was that crystal clear September day. It was. And if it were only one of these weather days, history would have been rewritten. And I think about that a lot now, and especially this time of year. So we're the peak of hurricanes. Yeah, you're celebrating 40 years? 40 years, imagine that, isn't it? 40 years. And, longevity has its own revenge. I've outlived like 15 generations of TV critics. Yeah. They all predicted I'd be done in a couple of weeks. Well, you still get...
Everyone has those stories, right?
Oh, yeah.
This was just 2 years ago. In September, and he brags on knowing about all the hurricanes, being right on top of it for the past 40 years. Yet didn't know that there was a hurricane on 9/11.
Hurricane Aaron.
Yep. If you go to the next page, there it is. Underreported, it wasn't reported.
And ladies and gentlemen, once again, a
that.
very good reason to
asking
buy
us
the book.
what's a fact I'm not aware of.
Sorry about that.
This is, it's right outside. That picture was taken on 9/11.
Wow.
And it's right off the end of Manhattan.
But there were no warnings or anything before that, right? I mean, I don't remember any.
And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that, slide 139, you'll see the thing for 4 days went straight to New York, and in the text things from the National Hurricane Center, they said, okay, it's expected to turn around today. Didn't. On day 2, well, it's expected to turn around today. It didn't. On day 3, they said it's expected to turn around today. It didn't. On day 4, they said it's expected to turn around today. Well, thank goodness it did, because they ran out of room. This is where the center of the hurricane was, but the outer bands are right at the edge of Long Island and over Cape Cod. And would you believe there's a flight attendant who did not know, who left that morning about 45 minutes before the fateful flights out of Boston, who did not know there was a hurricane there until he saw it on my website. The flight crew has the powwow before the flight about anything that's important to talk about. There's no mention of a hurricane. They're taking off with it. It was, right at the edge of the outer bands.
Wow. What now? There's a whole chapter dedicated to the weather or Hurricane Aaron in your book, and folks, like I said, that alone
on the morning at slide 140, you can see what was shown on the weather that morning, 10 minutes to 15 minutes beforehand.
We could see, yeah. Boy, it took a hard right turn there, didn't it?
Yeah, it was expected to turn at some point because of the high pressure system. But what a coincidence that 8 o'clock that morning, it's like it pulled up to a chalk line, made a U-turn, started heading out of town that afternoon. It was the closest it's been, but it kind of stalled out there for about 24 hours surrounding 9/11, before and after. And, constant wind speed, constant air pressure, constant location, like a controlled environment. And yet nobody talked about it. You could not evacuate the people from Manhattan fast enough. If the hurricane is just reaching there, when Hurricane Rita was approaching Houston, they first had it as voluntary evacuation, then it became mandatory as the storm got closer. It's hard to evacuate. How many millions of people are in Manhattan? And how fast can you evacuate them?
There's got to be at least 1,000 people there. But what can we deduce from this? I mean, can we make any reasonable deductions here about this, or is it?
It's strange that it was not reported. Well, that was underreported. I won't say not reported. That was underreported. And you can see from slide 140 that was the weather map from 10 minutes to 15 minutes before the first hole in the North Tower on 9/11. That's what was being aired on the TV. And I superimposed on the right where the hurricane was at that moment.
And I'm looking on page 405 of your book where I can see the inset showing the rising fumes from the Trade Center site and the hurricane.
Right. So you can tell what time it was, what day it was. And the Earth's magnetic field also took a jump at that point, too. It's a lot of strange stuff. Now, if you go to, move on to the picture of Tesla, 147. And remember, John Hutchison was trying to reproduce all the effects that different things that Nikola Tesla had done. And he started monkeying around, and there's this long list of, on slide 148, showing the various effects that he had gotten. And there's one of them, if you click the mouse, metal luminance without heat. Isn't that interesting? That's one of the effects he gets.
Metal, okay. So glowing without heat, how's that, right? Glowing without heat. Right.
Sound familiar?
Yeah, it does. And this is an effect of what?
What John Hutchison said. He calls it the Hutchison effect. I think Canada had named it that. But it's actually the reproduction of work of Nikola Tesla, T. Townsend Brown, George Pigott, and several others who've done this. And on slide 149 is a diagram that over 100 years ago, George Pigott got a patent on this, radiant electrical energy, where he's levitating steel balls using a static field. Now, static field. Well, you know what hurricanes do? Hurricanes have a static field around them. I can't say that's why it was there, but it's a fact that hurricanes have a static field around them. That's why birds know to head for cover before the storm gets there. And people say they can feel a storm coming. Some people say that because they're feeling the electrical environment. And as it turns out, John Hutchison generates a static field with either a Van de Graaff generator or a Tesla coil. And within that interferes radio frequency signals, and he gets levitation and a bunch of other interesting things. And let's see, just quickly to, and Ed Leedskalnin, who built Coral Castle.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see.
151.
Yeah, and 152. Yep, and right after that, right, 153 is a pretty interesting demonstration that he has, where he filmed a solid iron block about 7 inches tall by 2 inches by 2 inches, and it crumples up, fumes and crumples up. And it's cooler to the touch. And it's done. And that's 154 where the video runs.
Okay. 154.
Flames?
Yep. And also notice the door handle of the vehicle that's fuming.
Here's the block and the fuming. And by the way, this is wood underneath.
It's not toasting.
Wow.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, that car has a busted-out window. If you have smoke inside, it needs to come out. Why is it coming out the door handle instead of out the window? And it was door handles that were missing a lot. So whatever it is, it tends to be material-specific, at the outskirts of it.
Wow.
And if you click next picture, we can see these weird fires at the WTC. And if you click again, 156, here's John Hutchison's boat experiment. Now, notice when the gizmo is turned off, the water's calm. When it's turned on, you see the water jumping up. And you'll notice a pattern here. As soon as it turns off, the boat goes into spontaneous combustion. And this is a plastic boat.
Doug, have you seen this?
I haven't.
Okay, watch this water. It's on, right? And then he turns it off, and then look at the glowing. See the water? It's on, and then he turns it off, and then boom. The energy gets up.
Remember, Patrick Connolly comes out. He said he couldn't see his hand in front of his face because the dust was blocking all the sunlight. Then, thank goodness his car went into spontaneous combustion because then he could see where he was going.
Are we seeing water droplets levitate?
Jumping. Yep.
Jumping.
Energy source is turned on, and then it turns it off, and then boom. See that?
Holy cow.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And every one of the phenomena that we witnessed at the World Trade Center, and I didn't find John Hutchison's work until after I'd already. Remember, you let the data come to you. You don't force it anywhere. And I still didn't know what it meant, but I just, kept collecting the data and looking at the various categories. And I saw, matter of fact, John Hutchison has a name for the fuzzy blobs. I didn't talk about that, but this thing I described as fuzzy blobs, he was, I call that Carl. They named it after somebody.
My goodness. Okay, so we've got, I'll tell you what, we've got about 10 minutes of the show left. Dr. Wood, what's going on here?
There's a phenomenon that we aren't taught about in school. Can you jump to 166? That's the flying trucks. Remember, this was on TV last spring, April 3rd. There's all these tornadoes that were in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
The pictures are mind-boggling. Look at these right now. These tractor trailers we're going to show you, they look like Tonka trucks being thrown through the air right there, and then they piled up. There it is right there, right after the massive twisters. They were just flying through the air and twirling.
And entire neighborhoods were torn up. We have the roof ripped off from a home, the entire...
You went across a transport company, trees flying through the air, semi, the trailers, there you go, a couple of semi. Look at that, the beds of the trailers twirling around in the sky and then dropping down from at least 50 feet high down into the ground. You saw trees. There goes another semi. It's spinning. Down it comes. Bang. Lands on its nose right down at the ground. Big piece of the tree there that just got hurled up, I believe it was. So certainly we have seen a destructive tornado on the south side of Dallas, still within parts of the area near south of Grapevine, north of Arlington, a possible tornado in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area, as well as over on the east side of Dallas, in toward the area around the Mesquite area, just to the west of Mesquite and east of...
So this is not a new physics. This is a physics that we just haven't been taught. It exists in nature. And notice again, these are the trucks on rubber tires. Well, it wasn't dumpsters. Why were trucks so easily affected? And you know how when tornadoes hit trailer parks, there's more more damage. It's yet a different kind of physics than we were taught, but it obviously exists in nature. Now, if you can control that and figure out how to recreate it in your lab or whatnot, that's free energy.
Okay, so what we're looking at is, just if I was to make a conclusion based on the evidence I've seen right here, I could say with certainty, number one, the official story about what happened to the towers in Building 7 as well. I suspect this also goes for Building 7 too.
Yes.
Okay, what happened? The official narrative is far from correct. It's far from accurate. It's just. But you're bringing in now at the end of this the Tesla energy and I guess we would call it, well, just look at the front of your book, free energy technology directed, basically evidence of directed free energy technology.
Right. Let me say what the technology was. We can say beyond a doubt, most of the buildings turn into dust in midair.
Right.
And I'm going to ask you, does there exist a technology that can do that?
I can barely operate my computer.
If you say no, I'm going to ask you how something happened that was impossible to have happened. We know it happened, so therefore there must be a technology that can do that.
Right. I agree with that statement. Correct.
Okay. Now that you have that, we know that such a technology exists. Think of what else that technology can do. It doesn't necessarily have to be used for destructive purposes. If we use that for good, hey, there we go, free energy. That's what the cover of my book means. This is evidence of such a technology in existence.
But yet it may have been, or one could suggest that it played a role in the events of 9/11.
Well, yeah, there's a technology that exists that can do these things. But it also, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I also look at it, Doug, that free energy technology exists. That's exciting, but this technology is in the wrong hands, and they've used it to kill 3,000 people on 9/11 and 1 million people thereafter for war, for profit. That's why it's so important that we convey this to as many people as possible.
And Pete and Dr. Wood, I like the fact that we did not get into the why or the who. It's just the look at the evidence and the what. That's right. The look at the evidence. And I know some people might be frustrated thinking, well, no, we have to do it methodically. We have to do it step by step. 30 years, a lot of time spent in the courtroom. This is how it's done. And I think you've laid out a very compelling argument here, or a case that, well, some sort of energy.
Energy was directed. It was given instructions to do something that it normally doesn't do, that we're not familiar with. It did something that we don't normally see it doing, and also was directed geographically to destroy buildings with the WTC prefix, but not the building across the street.
All right.
So that's what I mean by directed energy. It was in the most general sense, it's energy that was directed, and it was used as a weapon. But we don't need to use it as a weapon. We can use it for good things. So the beauty of this discovery is that once people wipe away the brainwashing and look at the cover image of my book, it's plain to anybody around the world. They don't have to go see John Hutchison's lab to believe that this exists. They can look. They all saw what happened in 9/11. That's proof that free energy technology exists, and the whole world can know that it exists. Then people can develop it. The light of day.
Pete, Mr. Santilli, where can we find? Now you've got on your website the presentation from Dr. Wood, correct? You've got all the parts that you did with her. I think 4 parts or 3 parts.
I sure did. Yeah, the entire presentation from start to finish.
Okay, so folks that are interested in watching this in additional detail, perhaps getting things that they might not have gotten tonight, can go to your website. Go ahead.
And also the book, wheredidthetowers.com.
Yeah, look, folks. I'm a big proponent of books, and I'll tell you one thing. This book that I've got in my hand right here is worth its weight in, if not gold, certainly silver, because it goes painstakingly through all of the evidence that was laid out here in a methodical fashion. And I have to thank you, Dr. Wood, for writing this book. In closing, Mr. Santilli, take a few minutes. What are your thoughts?
Of course, we want to give Dr. Judy the opportunity to give the final remarks, but
sure.
I do. I'm here today to not only help Dr. Judy with giving the visual presentation, but I'm here to say that somebody like myself who was very curious, I'm a patriot, former United States Marine. I actually submitted my application to join the Air Marshals immediately after 9/11, and I was led to believe right then and there that brown people in the desert had actually perpetrated 9/11, and then I discovered that 9/11 was an inside job around 2006, and I was essentially told, look over here, it's the government, it was nanothermite, it was all these other things. But essentially I discovered back in October or November of last year that I'd been taken away from the evidence that we just saw today, that I was intentionally diverted away in what we call a psyop that we've literally all been under for the past 10 years or so, to look away from the evidence. And I encourage everyone to do exactly what I did and what Dr. Judy Wood taught me to do, and that is to just look at the evidence yourself. It's indisputable. There's no way that anyone can tell you what you're seeing isn't what you're seeing. Look at it yourself. You see the hurricane, you see all the stuff that we've seen today, and you'll realize that we've been under a psyop, and you need to resist it and know what it is. But most importantly, free energy technology exists, and right now it's in the wrong hands.
Very good. Dr. Wood, you've got the closing 2 minutes. Your final thoughts.
Know what you know that you know, and know that everything else you don't know. And don't fill that in with assumptions, because you're fixing to mess up then. If someone is pulling off a magic trick on you or a psyops, you're going to be led to make assumptions that are incorrect. And if you, like I explained, that if you begin with looking at who did it or how they did it and arguing about that, you're assuming what the problem is. So you're only solving an imaginary problem, and you will never, ever solve a real problem. But if you look at the evidence, you can see it. And my book is written to empower the reader to be able to understand for themselves. I don't want people to believe me. I want them to believe themselves. We got into this mess by everyone turning their thinking over to someone else's keeping. We need to take it back into our own keeping, and that's what the objective is of my book.
And we can purchase your book where, Doctor?
On my book site, which is wheredidthetowersgo.com. It's hard to type because it's all one word. And it'll be available also on Amazon. There's a back order right now, and then there's used books for lots of high price. And they're also available on Pete Santilli's site. And
Mr. Santilli, your website?
PeterSantilli.com. And also, I do want to offer to anyone, I believe that 500 or so pages of evidence, I pretty much guarantee anyone that purchases that book, and I've gone out on a limb to say that if you're not completely shocked by at least one item in that book and convinced that free energy technology does exist, return the book. We'll cover we'll refund your money, cover all of your shipping costs. It comes with an absolute guarantee, money back.
Fantastic. Well, I don't suspect many people will be returning any books. Mr. Santilli, Dr. Wood, God bless you both. Thank you so much for very methodically laying out your case tonight. Where did the towers go? And everyone should be asking that question. That is indeed important. God bless you both. Thank you so much for appearing on our show.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Good night, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, we've concluded the program tonight, the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Tomorrow night, we'll be back regular time, 8 o'clock, Joe and I in studio. Join us tomorrow night. God bless you. Have a good night. Joe, closing comments?
I just want to thank Mr. Santilli and Mrs. Wood for coming on. Their presentation was interesting, and I appreciate their time. You guys have a great night. We will see you tomorrow. same time. God bless you all and stay safe.
All right. Thank you both. Good night.